Okay, we will go ahead and call this meeting of the City Plan Board to order. Um, Thank you all for being with us this evening. Ms. McMullen, if you could go ahead and do the roll call.
Ackerman?
Here.
Sutton?
Here.
Newman?
Here.
Hawkins?
Here.
Blythe?
Here.
Hurst? Is here virtually. Jason, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, here.
Thank you. Okay, and Corrigetto.
Here. Okay. With that, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Okay, second from Bob, Brittany. All those in favor, please, oh, do we even have to do roll call for this? Sorry, I guess so.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think
for the next two, we're not gonna do roll call, but the other votes this evening, because Jason is virtual, we'll be doing roll call votes this evening.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Adam Sessler here on the public comment side. When you make motions and such, just turn to me for a quick second. Let me know if, let me have the opportunity to let you know if there's public comment.
Yes, yes. Do you have anyone on the line right now? Is that why?
No, Madam Chair, at this
Okay.
time, there's nobody on the line.
Okay, great, thanks. So we'll do a normal vote on the adoption of the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we will move ahead with our agenda. The next item is the adoption of the minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes, or if there's any amendments that need to be made?
I move we adopt the minutes as presented.
Okay, Mr. Ackerman,
Second.
a second from Mr. Newman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. With that, Ms. McMullen, would you please read the announcement into the record?
yes. Section 30-3.3 of the Land Development Code establishes the Plan Board, including its membership, rules of procedure and functions, powers, and duties. The Plan Board is advisory to the City Commission on most planning petitions. Appeals of Plan Board decisions concerning special use permits are to a hearing officer within 30 calendar days of the decision. See Section 30-3.58C of the Land Development Code. The procedure for an appeal is set forth in Section 30-3.58.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll have public comment. If anyone is here from the public that would like to address the board on matters not on our agenda tonight, please step forward.
Hello, my name is Kali Blount. I want to try to create a certain frame of mind for the work of this plan board. A couple of you I know are very well familiar with what I'm going to speak on, but the rest may not be. The 1,000-student development that is about to start in Fifth Avenue neighborhood. I think that your city commission has committed a gross violation of its own principles. You have a plan that talks about not violating the scale and character of an existing neighborhood with new development. And yet a site that was once the location of 53 units of fairly nice looking garden style townhouses of subsidized housing in a historically black neighborhood right next to the campus, Fifth Avenue neighborhood, is going to be a 1,000-bed student high-rise. If many other neighborhoods would object to incursions of student development, they would get a lot more attention and consideration. And I think it points to the history in this country of black residents and black neighborhoods being pawns and kept at the bottom of the economic pile, moved around at the whim of others. I'm on the county plan board and watched last night as your GRU was part of imposing a solar array on a historical black neighborhood over near Archer. Third attempt. And the attitude apparently is, never mind what these people like or want. We can do what we please. I hope you will contradict such behavior in your work.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak to items not on the agenda tonight? Mr. Shepherd, did you? Okay.
Yes, my name's Donald Shepherd. I'm People's Representative, be running for mayor. And what I'd like the planning board to do is look into the neighborhood over on Hawthorne Road where there's a meat market on one side and a car wash and a hairstyle on the other side. A mayor mentions about having city beautification. Well, this has been an eyesore for as long as I lived here and since 1979. And, you know, I went there to take and do a walk the neighborhood for mayorship and get my hair cut. And I found out that nobody's put in a petition for that to be beautified. The cement there is from prior owners that owned that property, and the ones that own it now haven't made no upgrades towards beautifying it or making it one level or nothing. And I think that that's an eyesore. I know it's an eyesore to me, but we have paint programs and construction programs, and so I would like to see that all one level go in there and take and put the cement down from where the barber shop starts to the road. That whole area is all upgraded and needs fixing proper. So I would like to bring that to the plan board to see if we can get that fixed. If we can't get it fixed this year, well then maybe in 2022, when I pray to the Lord above that I make it into being a mayor, because I got a lot of stuff on my books to take and get improved. Like 4th Street over here is no sidewalk in front of their church or get to the church. And they have to like park in the neighborhood to take an even walk to the church. And when I went there to take and see what the church is like, I seen this and I was like, oh my God, how does the city allow this not to be fixed for these people to attend their church? They have to, if it gets muddy, they have to walk in the mud. The clock didn't start.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
Okay.
I'm all done.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you very
Shepherd.
much.
We did talk a couple of meetings ago about a sidewalk program, but as to other improvements to private property, that's up to the private property owners.
Okay.
So,
Thank you very much. And your board.
thank you. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak to items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone on the phone line that would like to speak to items not on the agenda?
No, Madam Chair, the lines are clear. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Ms. McMullen, can you read the first item of old business into the agenda, into the record, please?
Petition PB-21-08 TCH, City of Gainesville, amend the Land Development Code to modify the purpose, objectives, effect, criteria, and procedures for implementation of the Heritage Overlay District. And we have Adam Carr on the Zoom call to present this item.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, let me share my screen. Going to it right now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen now.
Okay, I'll start presenting. Okay. All right. Good evening, Chair and members of the Plan Board. I'm Adam Carr, GIS Analyst for the Department of Sustainable Development, and we'll be presenting on Legistar Item 200729, Heritage Overlay District Text Change. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to stop me and I'll do my best to answer. Oh. All right, try again. Okay, so here's an overview of what we'll be covering this evening. First, a review of the prior Plan Board action on this item. Next, I'll cover some of the specific changes in the text that were made on the board's direction. Then I'll go over more detailed information related to the proposed reviewing board for regulated work item applications. Next, we can step through a sample process for an applicant seeking to do work on their property that is on the regulated work items list. And following that, I'll discuss the topic of addressing gentrification as it pertains to this text change. And finally, I'll provide staff's recommendation to the board regarding this item. So at the March City Plan Board meeting, the board passed a 10-part motion on this item. The motion provided staff with direction to make some specific small changes to the draft language, make more profound adjustments to the draft language, and offer general comment on some processes laid out in the proposed code language. Of the 10 parts in the motion, 7 dealt with specific changes to draft code language. I'd like to point out that with these alterations, you might have noticed, or you might notice that some portions of the proposed code language, especially in subsection E, have been moved around to accommodate changes and to hopefully make the process clearer, especially kind of regarding the designation of an overlay. So we'll start with some of the more straightforward changes to the proposed language. These were covered by items 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 in the motion. Then item 2, which involved combining the neighborhood narrative and design standards report into one process and document, will be covered after the more simple changes. And then to wrap up the draft code language changes, we'll go over a couple other modifications that staff made that the board can consider. So first up is the first part of the motion, which suggested to use community character overlay as the new name instead of heritage overlay district. And so this change has been reflected throughout the code language. You can see the titles changed, and wherever kind of district might have been highlighted before, it's been changed to community character overlay or just overlay. Item 5 specified to remove the word unique from a sentence in subsection E1. That subsection named application and process is now E2, but you can note that the word unique has been removed from the text. Item 6 outlines striking the previously proposed process for approving a community character overlay in subsection E3, and instead using a process similar to a rezoning where 100% of property owners included in a proposed area must approve of the overlay. This subsection petition requirements, again, was changed this time to E5, but the change has been made in the draft code language. Next, items 7 and 8 from the motion directed roof lines and shapes and fences to be added to the regulated work item list, and you can note those there. One note on this is that, and that staff wanted to let the board know about, is that legislation is circulating in Tallahassee right now that may preempt some regulation of building design elements. The most current form of legislation is Senate Bill 1146, and as currently written would apply to single-family or two-family dwellings. The most recent text we were able to find would preempt regulation of some design elements that are currently in the list of regulated work items, like the style and material of roof structures and the style and material of porches. Just note that this legislation is still going through committee review, and it hasn't been passed or anything like that, and is subject to more changes. But we wanted to let you know that staff will be monitoring this, and we might need to adjust the code language if necessary. Next up is item 10, which is just removing the eligibility map portion from the criteria subsection, and just note that it's been removed.
I know that was hard for you, Adam. I apologize.
Oh yeah, it really got me in the heart. No, I'm just kidding. So next is item 2 from the motion, which directed staff to combine the neighborhood narrative and design standards report into one process and document. So this is a new subsection in the procedures portion of the draft language, and it combines elements from what was in subsection D and F in the prior version of the draft code language. So subsection 3A here outlines the neighborhood narrative portion, and 3B through F describe the design standards report. Okay, so now some other changes that were made to the draft code language. One was adding text specifying which zoning districts would be able to accommodate a community character overlay. So in the currently adopted code, this is limited to RSF 1 through 4 and RC, but in the updated draft language, it's been expanded to include RMF 5, U1, and RMF 5, U1, U2, or U3. Staff made this addition to help simplify the overlay designation process. Previously, there had been some discussion regarding if zoning districts that permit higher intensity development could have an overlay placed on them. Staff wasn't too concerned about this occurring, but this language was added to be more straightforward and reduce some ambiguity. So if desired, this language could be removed or leave it as it is right now in the draft. One thing that I did want to note on this is that if the addition of these specified zoning districts is supported by the board, there would need to be another small edit to code language in subsection C4. And this would state that if a property in a community character overlay is rezoned to something other than what is allowed, these allowed zoning districts, then a simultaneous rezoning process to remove the community character overlay would need to take place as well. I'm sorry I missed this when I was drafting the code language provided to the board for this meeting, and I apologize for that. But it would be a pretty straightforward fix, and it would actually look similar to the current code language that's in subsection C4. So I just wanted to note that. Okay, the last bit of updated code text. There are 2 new subsections added to the end. These outline the process for regulated work item applications and what happens if work on a regulated item is started before an application is approved. The proposed process, we'll go over this in a little bit more detail later in the presentation. And I wanted to note that I couldn't fit it all on here for subsection G, but there's more that comes after that. Okay, so now on to the reviewing board. This was another part of the motion where the board requested staff to bring back more information about the pluses and minuses of using the development review board or the historic preservation board or a new board as the reviewing body for regulated work item applications and a community character overlay. Staff reviewed code language related to the boards and looked at past meeting trends from the DRB and the HPB. And you can find this information that I'll discuss next in a document provided in the backup as well. First, the DRB, it was given, or in the code, it's given 4 main duties that focus on reviewing applications for development plan approval pursuant to the Land Development Code and making broader recommendations on land development regulations. Considering meeting trends and items up for review, the DRB held 14 meetings from January 2018 to the present. And there were a total of 39 regular meetings that could have been held in that time frame. The board reviewed an average of about 1 item per meeting, with the maximum number of items for review in any one meeting being 3. The HPB is given 12 main duties in the code, focusing on ensuring that historically and culturally significant resources in the city are preserved. This is done through broader advisory actions, as well as reviewing individual petitions for certificates of appropriateness. Considering meeting trends and items for the HPB, they held 36 meetings from January 2018 to the present. And they, just with the way that the weeks worked out, they could have held 40 regular meetings in that time frame. The board reviewed an average of about 6 items per meeting, with the maximum number of items in any one meeting being 16. And then the last option would be that a new board could be created to focus on community character overlay items. The new board, once established, would only deal with reviewing regulated work items applications, at least to begin with. However, the process of establishing the board would need to be undertaken, and staff would need to be allocated to support the board. So with these considerations in mind, staff recommends using the DRB as the reviewing body for regulated work item applications in a community character overlay. The DRB is already established. They have experience reviewing applications for compatibility with defined development regulations specified in the code. And the DRB has a comparatively greater capacity to review additional items when comparing them to the HPB. Okay, now on to the sample application process. Part 9 of the motion passed by the board directed staff to outline a prospective process for an applicant who wants to do work on their property and a community character overlay where that work is governed as a regulated work item. A document was provided as backup that describes the process in greater detail, in addition to new subsections G and H of the draft code language. But the process would be similar to that of applying for a certificate of appropriateness in a historic district. Essentially, the process would consist of a pre-application conference with city staff, completion and submission of the regulated work item application, and review of the application by the board. The minimum amount of time for an application to move through this process, and this would really be the minimum, would be about a month. And this would likely require some preparation ahead of time by the applicant. The cost of a regulated work item application is currently set at $127.50. And the penalty if work is done on a regulated work item prior to the approval of an application is $473.25, in addition to the applicant then having to pay for a regulated work item application. All right, last piece is the most complex part of the motion, addressing gentrification as it pertains to the community character overlay. Gentrification is a fuzzy concept that encompasses various outcomes, but issues related to displacement and affordable housing have become top of mind when considering gentrification. often activities undertaken by the private sector are presented as clear examples or symbols of gentrification and displacement, but the public sector can play a role in facilitating these actions through things like infrastructure investment and policy changes. And that's not to say that these activities by the public sector don't offer clear benefits to the community and are for the public good, but there can be unintended consequences associated with these actions. So thinking about gentrification in the context of establishing an overlay district, an analog that is apparent in research on the topic is how historic districts impact gentrification. Research in this area has shown that establishing historic districts are often correlated to increases in property values. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in the context of displacement and affordable housing, it makes some areas, more difficult to access for lower income groups, more difficult for them to find housing in these areas. Historic districts also typically add barriers to new development, which does serve an important public purpose, but can make new development more difficult or costly. Again, this is for historic districts, but there are kind of similarities to the overlay district that we're thinking about. So research has also suggested some methods for mitigating displacement and affordable housing concerns in these situations. First, it's important to ensure that there is strong community engagement and involvement in the process of implementing an overlay district. If a large portion of the neighborhood is involved throughout the process, then the end result will better meet the needs of the community rather than a subset or outside interests. Second, limiting restrictions that could be put in place to only what is necessary to accomplish the goals of the program, just to limit restrictions put on potential development and things of that nature. And then third, and this kind of ties back to the first point, but having a high threshold for approval or a higher threshold for approval of an overlay district is important. The more people that need to approve the decision, it just means the more people that it will meet in terms of their vision of what they want their neighborhood or their community to be. So with these considerations in mind, I'd like to go through a couple of positives and negatives of the community character overlay regarding gentrification and displacement. So there are potential challenges with the overlay. The establishment of a community character overlay on an area may lead to increases in property values over time, which could have the effect of pushing out lower income and longtime residents or making that area more difficult to access for lower income folks. Also, an overlay will increase regulation on development, and there will be an added cost when a property owner or other applicant seeks to do certain things to their property. But on the plus side, the draft language does a better job of placing a strong emphasis on community involvement in the development and implementation of an overlay. The collaborative and community-centric neighborhood narrative is key, and if it remains a robust process with solid buy-in from stakeholders, there should be a more equitable outcome overall. Also, the draft code language for the overlay is a little less restrictive in terms of potential regulated work items compared to the current text and to historic districts more generally. So even though more regulations would have the potential to be added, hopefully this will reduce potential burdens for those seeking to improve or redevelop their property and thereby mitigate impacts to housing development and affordability. So to conclude, staff recommends the City Plan Board provide direction and approve the community character overlay text change.
Thank you.
That's it for my presentation.
Are there any questions from the board for staff? Mr. Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions for Mr. Carr.
Sure.
One is, in the process question of how we do the change in the adoption of an overlay, should the city ever adopt one of these? You said that it would be like a normal rezoning requiring every property owner's buy-in. And my understanding is that if we do a quasi-judicial rezoning where one property owner wants to change the zoning designation on their property, they need to have an affidavit showing ownership and some evidence that they own it. But if the city is doing a legislative zoning change, whether the city commission initiates it or whether an individual initiates it, we don't require approval of all property owners. It just goes through the legislative process of adopting an amendment to the land development code. Is that? So it's my understanding is that to make this like a normal rezoning would make it like any other legislative change to the land development code. Is that?
Madam Chair, I can probably jump in.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't really think about it in terms of what Member Hawkins had brought up. The city commission they can always initiate a zoning change, and in this case, a zoning change to establish one of these districts. I guess from like a single property owner initiating a rezoning petition that would affect other property owners. I mean, up to whatever the limit is, like 25, or the minimum is 25 parcels. That I would probably we would probably want to consult with legal staff on.
Okay, do you have a follow-up?
But the city
Go ahead.
commission
Here-
definitely.
Here's an example. I can't remember when it was, but this is the one that first comes to mind. A few months ago, EDA wanted to change our rules on how we regulate duplexes in certain zoning districts to allow them to be stacked instead of side by side. And they did that because they represented a property owner who owned one specific piece of property they wanted to develop with duplexes. So they wanted a change to the zoning code that affects every district in the city that allows duplexes. But it was a legislative change. We had no property owner approval from the affected property owners. Like for example, the property that I own where my house is was affected. I could now build a double top to bottom duplex instead of a side by side. But nobody called me. They shouldn't have to, right? When we do legislative rezonings, are we thinking on the same page, Mr. Persons, or am I misunderstanding something?
I think I understand what you're saying, and I think, as you said, the city or through like a private application to make amendments to the city's land development code. That's certainly within the realm of work. I guess in my mind, something like an application of an overlay, in this case, like the community character overlay, would be more of a quasi-judicial action than a legislative one.
It would be legislative because it's setting a standard for future people to come in and apply for whatever this new permit we're going to call under the community character overlay, under the process that Mr. Carr described. But if we don't know the answer, that's totally fine. But I guess for what it's worth, I feel very confident that the reason we don't have any heritage districts, one of the leading ones, is because of the standards on making the neighborhood collect signatures and instigate the process. And so I want to remove those barriers for the community character overlays. So, whatever that's worth. If the city commission follows through and actually instigates these process on its own, then I guess these are moot points. The second one was the question that I had for Mr. Carr on paragraph D3, where we are listing now zoning designations. My recollection of the draft at the last meeting is we were not limiting this to any zoning designations. We were restricting it to certain parts of the city with the map. And when we eliminated the map, the idea was that this would be eligible anywhere in the city the city commission adopted an ordinance applying it. So that the zoning designations we're adding are all new, and we're reducing the scope from the entire city, which was the motion last week, to just a certain number of zoning categories. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. And I kind of touched on it in the presentation, but the thought behind that was just to, I know, or I recall in previous meetings, there was some discussion as to kind of where it could apply, and, you know, certain perhaps zoning districts or properties that it's like, oh, you know, this property could have really intense development on it, and then you want to put an overlay on it, and there's just some questions about what that process would be like, when kind of the intention or the original intention of the text seemed to be focused more on kind of residential neighborhoods. So those zoning districts were added in and expanded from what is currently in place. What currently in the heritage overlay text or heritage overlay district text in the code, it's just limited to RSF 1 through 4 and RC. But there are, you know, other zoning districts that exhibit kind of a single family or a residential neighborhood development typology. And so including some of those zoning districts that accommodate those areas, but it was the goal. And, you know, I think staff would be happy to remove that text if that's what the board would like, but we just wanted to provide that as an option, I suppose.
Thank you. That was excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Newman?
Thank you. So, just so I'm clear, if there is a petition for a neighborhood, the way it's now is that every person in that community has to authorize that they're on board with that petition? Is that what I understand?
Correct. That's how the text is currently written. And that was partially done. It's possible that I misinterpreted some of the direction from the board last time, but that was partially done to try and get to direction from the board last time, and I might have misinterpreted it. But yes, what you said is correct.
Okay. I don't know if that's what we had intended. I don't know, maybe I misunderstood. I think we were trying to come up with a cleaner way of figuring out some level of support from the community for a petition. So I'd be curious what other board members thought about that.
Well, there was also some conversations about property owners versus tenants, and what if there's a apartment building with 10 units? Do all of those tenants get a vote and the property owner gets a vote? Does the property owner get 10 votes because there's 10 units? So there was a lot of conversation about that. So if you have to have unanimous approval by every tenant and every property owner, I just think that's an onerous requirement, and we're going to continue to not see any of these districts created. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think what we're proposing here is going to solve the problem that the City Commission's trying to solve. I think it might actually make it worse. One issue that I had actually was one of the text changes, and this may have been in a previous version and I just didn't get it. I just didn't catch it, but under B, objectives, we've changed it from economic, educational, aesthetic, cultural pieces of a community to say equitable development. I actually think the cost and the process and the hassle of creating this and following through with changes and improvements to property is the opposite of creating equitable development. I think it's adding a lot of barriers for people. I think that we're going to see a lot of, the people who have emailed us, the neighborhoods that are interested, aren't neighborhoods that they're places like Gulfview and Florida Park. And yes, there's unique character in those neighborhoods, but I think the city commission has a different set of neighborhoods that they're concerned about, and I really think the answer to solving those problems is a special area plan that the city and city staff works on, and it doesn't require all of this work and time and effort and expense from those neighbors. So I continue to have a lot of concerns. I don't support this. You know, I just don't think we're gonna get the goals that we want accomplished. And when it stuck out to me when I was reviewing the material and saw this in objectives, that it said equitable development, I mean, I almost laughed because that's the opposite of what we're doing here. So, I see a couple other people want to comment. Thomas, you were next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said a lot of things that I think are interesting. And I don't agree with your ultimate conclusion that this goes in the wrong direction. I think a lot of the problems that I hear people talk about in our kind of in-town areas, this addresses. They have a lot to do with the form of development, its compatibility with surrounding development, sort of character. And I think that this gets to that.
If they can jump through the hoops.
What's that?
If they jump through the hoops.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, it's not people who if you want to do an addition on your house or build a new house, so you have a contractor. I mean, lay people don't go through these processes. Sometimes they do, but typically it's because they want to engage in that way. Right? I mean, if you're building a new house, you have a contractor. You can't build a house yourself.
No, that process, yes, I'm referring to, but I'm referring to more putting all of the documents together, collecting all the signatures and the work that it takes to create the district in the first place, being a barrier.
Yeah.
So we aren't going to have any.
I agree with that, and I'm on the same mind as what you're saying and what Mr. Member Newman said. I think I don't want to slow this down for this purpose, but I would suggest we revisit this question of whether this kind of adopting an overlay would be a legislative or a quasi-judicial change in zoning. I'm certain it's legislative. I'm certain that's a process where we don't ask for property owners' input. We just do it. The city commission has outreach processes, of course, and should engage in them. So I'm not saying that we don't care what people think, but it's ultimately the judgment of the city commission as to whether it meets the community standards, not sort of a direct democracy style. But I don't, obviously staff needs to, I'm not going to supplant my judgment for what Mr. Person said. That's the conversation that would need to be had with the city attorney and for them to think about more closely. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm just curious, what is a historic, like a historic overlay, or how, when we designate a historic district, what is that considered? Do you know offhand?
That's a legislative
because I would think
change.
this would be similar.
Yeah, it's legislative.
Okay.
And then when you get your individual certificate of appropriateness, those decisions are quasi-judicial. But one thing that you said that I do really strongly agree with is that it would be better to approach all of this, I think, by just doing one-off special area plans where we thought they were appropriate. For whatever reason, the city commission, in consultation with staff, instead decided us to work on this to revamp the heritage overlay process. And I think we should do it that way because that's the way they asked us to, even though I don't think it's the most efficient as you described. So I'm in complete agreement with you on that, but it's kind of like somebody above our pay grade decided that's the way they wanted to do it. So that's the real point that I wanted to make. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Ackerman?
So far, this does not appear to address the goals that we're trying to address. And for me, that's a serious problem. What we've kind of done is come up with a more cumbersome system, and I don't care who ends up having to do it, it adds cost to the process. And the idea that we're just going to dump this on a contractor and say he's going to do it, he doesn't do it for free. One of the issues we have is that every time we add regulations to construction, it raises the cost of that construction. And that's the exact opposite of trying to provide affordable housing. I think, the other issue is this is kind of turning into historic district light with even less, less parameters to it. So I honestly, I just think, I understand what some neighborhoods are unhappy about. They're unhappy about the character of their neighborhood leaving, but to some extent it's self-inflicted, meaning people are doing that already. And we have an awful lot of people in there that are not going to want to be subject to this. And I think if we added 100% buy-in, I think we're never going to have another one of these things, or ever have one. But I truly believe that this is adding a lot of cost, and I'm not sure that it even begins to address the issue that we're trying to address. And I'm not, I kind of agree, Madam Chair, with using an overlay district, but I still can't support this the way it is right now. Thank you.
Mr. Newman?
Yeah, and I guess this is, so just for clarification, so, again, so either the city can initiate this or some petitioners. So it seems to me like the way it's right now, no one's gonna petition, you're not gonna get 100%. So essentially, and maybe that's what is needed, and that, you know, the city, you know, should be sort of making these decisions. But the other thing too is like, and I hear the discussion around sort of costs, and so I mean, conceivably, you could have an overlay zone that basically just said the only thing that is regulated is demolishing. Right? I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, that community could say, that's the only thing that we want regulated, is just demolishing buildings. So I think that we're, and this is difficult, I think, to sort of imagine. It does give lots of flexibility on what gets to be done. But, and I think, again, a lot of this is being sort of driven by, let's say, corridors or sort of Fifth Ave examples. And again, I think for good reason, like we're trying to sort of find a tool to sort of address this. But, it could be that, it could be that, that going through that process, that maybe it's decided that, we just don't want, if you're gonna demolish buildings, you have to come before the Development Review Board or whatever. And obviously that's probably not, there's gonna be other conditions, in there, but if for example, through the process of that, the whole intent is for the community, hopefully for a community process to sort of outline general consensus about what would they want in there, it should, hopefully it will reflect what that neighborhood wants. And I think an important component, which is not sort of in here, is potentially, particularly if the city is going to sort of be doing something, is like an analysis for the community as to what are the potential ramifications of doing this. So it's like, let's say, this could drive up costs, this could still, cause, these things to happen. And again, there's always uncertainty, but, that it might be a good thing to sort of have that level of understanding. So, yeah, so to me, I guess when I look at this, it's basically the way it's written right now, like there's not going to be any petitions from a neighborhood to sort of do this. It's impossible. So, and then it just comes down to the city wanting to do something, and this, could be a tool that they would use. So.
Sophia, is that you?
Yeah, so I'm conflicted a bit because, in terms of this achieving what the city is trying to achieve, like when I read the objectives, encouraging more community involvement, as Adam said, one of the positives of this was, I think that, for example, is a good thing. encouraging the use of existing buildings, I think, is a really good thing. And so I'm wondering, now that we're in this process of this comp plan update, because I'm pretty sure these are certain things that aren't currently existing in our zoning code as is, and I feel like these are just kind of some basic things that we should have in our code to apply to the city, whether it's the city at large, whether it's certain neighborhoods. So I'm wondering if certain objectives in here, instead of incorporating them into an overlay, we just include them as recommendations to include in our comp plan update, as opposed to just waiting for a community to get all the petitions necessary to have this kind of protection on their neighborhood, to just kind of make this the norm in our zoning code. Just a few of these things that could be totally out of left field, but it's just kind of where my mind's going in terms of realizing and just listening to y'all about not being super sure about this and it being a really cumbersome process, but being conflicted, because I do really love a lot of those objectives that are currently in this overlay text. And just in terms of the rezoning, I do think that that's something that should be removed, just because I'm aware that there's some neighborhoods in the city that just have a really wide variety of zoning districts in them, and I think that would kind of complicate it if we're getting nitty gritty about which districts can be included and which can't. But yeah, I would just be curious to hear what y'all think. And in terms of petitioning or not, I don't know how much it would be to ask of certain staff working either on engagement or equity what they think about engaging the community in that way, to hear from them about, not to hear from them, but just what they think might be a more effective process than petitioning, because I can't currently think of something that might be more effective and less cumbersome. But yeah, I think the gist of where I'm at right now is that I do think that there are objectives in here that are well-intentioned and that should somehow make their way to the zoning code, and perhaps it's just not in the form of an overlay district.
Thanks. I think some of what you all said prompted a couple of thoughts in my mind. One of them is, and I don't know the answer to this, but I imagine that if a neighborhood came together and wanted to restrict things like fences and types of roofs and types of windows, that can all be done through a homeowners association as well. Growing up, I lived in a neighborhood that if you were going to paint or do anything to your house, you had to take it to the HOA. Those organizations also bring the decision-making power to the neighborhood directly. They don't charge a fee to submit an application. They obviously would have to work with an attorney to set up an HOA, but we're asking them to pay a rezoning fee. So if neighborhoods are really passionate about restricting certain things that they're seeing or the character, there are other avenues to do that from a neighborhood perspective, to build, collaboration within your neighborhood, to build an association that's specific to that. Part of my concern is if somehow, and I agree, this isn't, an onerous process for neighborhoods, and we probably aren't going to see any created, just like there haven't been to this point. But somehow, if we get 10 different community character districts around the city, and then we send all of those applications to the DRB, they have 10 different criteria to look at. Every time they see an application, they've got to re-identify what the criteria are for that specific neighborhood. They aren't going to be experts in all 10 of them. They may not see applications very often in all 10 of them. It just makes me think, we're essentially creating, this city version of a homeowners association to some degree. And I have some reservations about that. If there are things that the commission is concerned about, like demolitions, which I think is an interesting point Mr. Newman made, that's something that we can do. We can take, we could take the map and recommend that any demolitions within that original map area do have to go to the DRB or whatever else. Through the code, we can change the process for demolitions and the application process, and within different areas. That's all within the purview of the city commission to make that decision and that change without having to get neighborhood input and have everyone vote on it. If they see a specific concern such as demolitions, let's address that specific concern. And if it's not citywide, and if it's only in this mapped area, that's fine too. That can all be added to the code without all of the problems that we've stated and concerns with this district. So I don't think that we're gonna get the answers that we're looking for with this. I really think if the city sees concerns, if it's something specific like demolitions, there's ways to change the regulations and requirements for that. If it's specific areas of the city, I think special area plans have been really successful in the past. We got rid of all of them with the new code, but they were successful up to that point, and I think that's the direction that they should go. Mr. Hawkins.
Chair, I don't think we've gotten it perfect, but I think that what we have done together is a dramatic improvement over the original draft that staff brought to us. And it's been a good collaborative process. And I know ultimately the city commission is going to take this and do what they want to do with it. They're going to run it through their own process, and I am absolutely certain that they'll have lots of discussion over more than one meeting. So I think the best thing that we can do now is to take it off our plate in the condition that we've got it and give it to them and let them decide whether they want to adopt it, reject it, etc. The only thing that I would suggest that we change, and this is in agreement with Member Corrigato suggesting that we strike it, and because I think some of the comments even that you made, Madam Chair, about limiting the areas of the community that we had this at our last meeting and talking about getting rid of the map. So that one change would be to strike the limiting zoning designations that are there in the current draft. So I'll make a motion that we recommend, or so we refer to the petition, I guess we adopt the petition PB-21-08 TCH with one modification, and that's to strike the limiting zoning designations in paragraph D3.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Mr. Newman?
Yeah, just for a matter of process, so essentially what we're, this could essentially the majority of the city plan board could vote against this. It's still moving on, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, I think we want to pass it on. It's a matter of, with the way that the motion is phrased, are we voting as to whether we are recommending approval to the city commission or not? That's my sense. But I think you're just asking for clarification, right? Okay. Okay, so with that change, we will do a roll call vote on this one. Ms. McMillan, actually, you know what? We haven't done public comment yet. Do we have anyone here in the room that would like to comment on this item?
I very much agree with one of your initial comments about how high the bar should be for the owners to consent. It would seem that there ought to be a way to include the input of long-time residents who are not owners, but demanding 100%. I mean, in a democratic society, the democratic societies are cauldrons of disagreement. I mean, saying it has to be everybody agreeing is setting it up for failure. I could see a high bar, somewhere 67% or up, a super majority, maybe 67 to 89%. But saying that they must all sign on almost guarantees failure.
Thank you. Anyone else here that would like to speak to this item? Okay, not seeing any. Do we have anyone on the phone?
No, Madam Chair, there's nobody on the lines at this time. The floor is yours.
Okay. Okay, then we will go to a roll call vote. Ms. McMullen, if you're ready.
Alrighty. Ackerman.
No.
Sutton.
No.
Newman. Hawkins.
Yes.
Blythe.
No.
Hurst.
No.
And Corrigetto. So motion fails.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for your time and effort. We've talked about this a lot. We'll see what the city commission does with it moving forward. Thank you, Adam, for coming back and forth with us on this one.
Madam Chair, if I will, or if I can,
Uh-huh.
I did want to, I did want to just, personally thank the plan board, because I know this was not an easy series of discussions, and many of the issues I think that the board discussed, the commission was also grappling with, and we as staff have grappled with. So I just wanted to say it because I think it's worth saying. But I wanted to thank everybody for their thought on this.
So as a point of clarification, just so everyone's clear, when this does get presented to the commission, will the plan board recommendation then just not be for approval? I'm kind of asking Andrew.
So I guess what's interesting about this one, and I hadn't thought about it, but this is a text amendment. So
Right.
us saying that we don't want the amendment implies that we support what's there currently.
Or
And I don't know that that's the case either. So I don't know if there's any interest in making another motion just to pass along a accompanying recommendation to the city commission. Perhaps just to strike this and come up with a better solution to what they're trying to do. If someone would like to make an accompanying motion, I agree that would give them more guidance on where we stand on this. Because we're leaving the old Heritage Overlay District language in place with this recommendation. So, members that can make a motion, chew on that for a second. Mr. Ackerman.
Madam Chair, I would move that the planning board recommend to the city commission that the Heritage District, as it's now constituted, is scrapped, and that we attempt to deal more effectively with the issues that are being presented to us regarding community character, and perhaps overlay plans to be more effective. That's a pretty rambling motion.
Did you catch the gist of that, Ms. McMullen? Okay, Mr. Hawkins? Do you want me to wait for a second? Is there a second to this motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Newman, Mr. Hawkins?
Yeah, we've had a lot of meetings on this, and I know trying to find consensus on code
Changes is hard, and we're never going to have a situation where everybody thinks it's perfect. Like, I could keep fiddling with this for a long time and probably satisfy a lot of my, ego compulsions in the process. But we wouldn't get anywhere. I feel like we've, had three meetings, at least, maybe 4, where we went in the guts of this, and especially at the last one, we really got in the guts. I really think everybody had an opportunity to be heard and contribute to the motion. I mean, there's a reason the motion was 10 parts. It's because I took a note of every substantive change that somebody suggested and got them in there. I guess I just hate to see us not work together to give the best recommendation we can.
So the city commission will still see the language that we all work to refine as a draft, correct? I mean, you'll take the same petition to them with the same information as
Of course,
a starting
yeah.
point, I imagine, right?
Yes, yeah, of course. And as I'm sure you all know, the commissioners watch the plan board meetings oftentimes, so I know they've been likely following along the deliberations over the past couple of meetings regarding this issue.
I definitely understand your concerns, but I can't support something that I think is gonna make the problem worse and not solve the problem. I mean, I just think structurally, this isn't the right solution to the problems that we're trying to solve.
Board Member Hurst has his hand up.
Okay. Mr. Hurst.
This is a small comment, but I know that the last time that we talked about this, I brought up the point about the just asking for point of clarification about the name Heritage Overlay. Is there a way, and I don't even know if this is the right forum for us to at least make an amendment to that name change? Because that hasn't, honestly, that hasn't sat well with me since. I mean, I love the community character overlay as a designation, even if we're going to leave some kind of mark here. I think that's something that we definitely need to make a recommendation for.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurst. I happen to agree. Is that something that you're willing to take into your motion, Mr. Ackerman?
Not really. I mean,
No, okay.
I don't object, but it just doesn't seem relevant to the, Mr. Hurst is right, it's a very small change to something that's kind of a, I think it's not really addressing the issue that we're supposed to address. The name is the least important part of it, I think.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, any other comments on this before we take a vote? Ms. McMullen, do we need to open this to the public? It wasn't really a public item, it's sort of a side
It's up to you.
item. Okay, I think it's related to the previous item, so if everyone feels comfortable just moving ahead with vote.
Well, we've already had
Okay.
public comment on it.
So we'll have to do a roll call vote on this one as well. Ms. McMullen, if you will start that process.
Yes. Ackerman,
No. I'm sorry, yes. Gotten to be Dr. No on this.
okay, Sutton,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Hawkins,
Oh.
Blythe,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
and Corrigetto.
No.
Motion passes 4-2. Well, 5-2. 1, 2, 3. 5-2, sorry.
5-2. Okay, thank you. Now, moving on to new business. Ms. McMullen, can you read the next item into the record?
Yes. Petition PB-19-145 LUC EDA agent petition for land use change from City of Gainesville residential medium and residential low to City of Gainesville urban mixed use high intensity, generally located northwest of the intersection of Southwest 43rd Street and Southwest 24th Avenue, related to PB 19-146 ZON. And I will be given the presentation on this.
Okay, while you pull up your presentation, I'll just announce I've submitted a Form 8B on this item as well as the next zoning item, so I'll be recusing myself from these petitions.
All right. Can you see my screen? I'm just kidding. Okay, well, I went all the
Skip
way
to the good part there.
Yeah, went all the way to the end there. All right, so good evening. Brittany McMullen, planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. The properties involved in this application are located northwest of the intersection of Southwest 43rd Street and Southwest 24th Ave. There are 4 parcels involved with this request, which total about 25 acres. The existing land use at the properties, as you can see from this map, are residential low and residential medium density. The residential medium category allows for 8 to 30 dwelling units per acre, and the residential low allows for up to 15 dwelling units per acre. So the request again is to amend the future land use map from City of Gainesville residential medium and residential low to City of Gainesville urban mixed use high intensity. So the proposed land use category would allow 10 to 100 dwelling units per acre by right and up to 25 additional dwelling units per acre by special use permit approval. So a portion of the property is located within the Hogtown Prairie Strategic Ecosystem, so there may be environmentally sensitive areas on portions of the property. The city's environmental coordinator has provided a memo regarding environmental considerations, and she is on the Zoom call with us tonight to answer any questions you may have about that aspect. So the properties that we're looking at are directly adjacent to the urban village, which was established in the comprehensive plan in 2011 to support and implement a long-term vision for redevelopment and development in an area proximate to the University of Florida. So as the properties are abutting the urban village and are requested to be designated with the same future land use, the application also requests the extension of the urban village map adopted in the comprehensive plan. And you can see the properties highlighted or outlined in red on this map. These are the criteria for reviewing a land use change. Staff finds that the review criteria are met as outlined in the staff report and therefore recommends approval of the petition. And I believe the petitioner is on the Zoom call as well to share a presentation.
Okay, great. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, we will go to the petitioner. I believe Ms. Lazari is up there in the corner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Plan Board members. I do have a presentation this evening. I'm going to ask the chair to confirm that my screen is shared.
Don't see it yet. There it is. It's coming up now.
Madam Chair, it should be up now.
Yes,
correct?
it is. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is a large-scale land use amendment for 4 parcels in Southwest Gainesville. Ms. McMullen covered the location of them. This is a map showing that they are east of I-75 and then west of Southwest 43rd Street. This is an aerial view, and I want you to take note of this cleared area here, which is a power line easement, because I will discuss that in a minute. There's also a cleared area here, which is also a power line easement that impacts the property. This is a future land use map amendment to take the property from residential low and residential medium to the urban mixed use high intensity for those 4 parcels. We are also asking that the urban village map in the future land use element be amended to include these 4 parcels because we would like them regulated consistent with the urban village. This is the existing future land use map. This shows you the urban mixed use high intensity abutting the parcels to the east side. South of this is the business industrial area, and then of course we have I-75 here. This is conservation and owned by the city of Gainesville as part of the Forest Park Conservation Area, and I have a little bit more information about that in a few minutes. This is the proposed map showing that we would be contiguous with the current urban mixed use here and moving it to the west. This is the existing urban village map that Ms. McMullen showed you. And as she indicated, we are asking to be added to that urban village map. I happen to be in the unique situation of having worked on this property or these properties on both sides. Back in 2007, when they were first annexed into the city, I worked for the city of Gainesville and actually worked on some of the land use and rezoning on these properties. And now I find myself working on them again. The land use and the zoning that were established back in 2007 and 2008 was before the urban village was established in 2011. So, and then in 2015, the U9 and the urban mixed use high land use designations were created as part of the Transect rezoning. The parcels are located in the UF context area and the Transportation Mobility Program area, Zone M. As I said, there are 2 power line easements that impact the parcel. And those impact how much development can occur in those areas, which is why we're trying to get to a higher density to allow a reasonable proportion of development on the property. And there's the proposed new extension of Southwest 62nd Boulevard, which impacts the parcels, and I'll have some illustrations of that. These are the two power line easements that I alluded to, one along the western property edge and one bisects the property diagonally. This is the proposed 62nd Boulevard extension, and as you can see, it travels through the property on the western side, but there are additional impacts, and you'll have to reorient yourself. This is north, this is the property, and you'll see that some of the stormwater which will be needed for this road extension extends into the property. And then this will be right-of-way associated with it. This is right-of-way, and then there is a proposed multi-use path also, which will be a bicycle pedestrian facility. So our justification for this action is that we are contiguous to the existing urban mixed-use high to the east. We're contiguous to the urban village. This would allow for a mix of uses, which makes more sense than the sort of sole residential medium and residential low designations for housing. It is thought that the associated transect zoning and the urban village designation will provide for better development on these properties. The extension of Southwest 62nd Boulevard definitely impacts the area and opens it up to development because previously these parcels were essentially landlocked, and the power line easements impact the use of the property also. I have more presentation in terms of consistency with the comprehensive plan and meeting the criteria, but I know you have a long agenda this evening. So I'm going to skip forward and just request that the Plan Board approve petition PB 19-145 LUC, which will change the land use category to urban mixed use high and add the parcels to the urban village map. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Lazari. I believe Mr. Ackerman has a question for you.
I think I read in your report that well, I read that there were areas of wetlands as well as some archaeological resources and 2 historic structures. But then I also thought I read that those parcels have already been acquired by the city. Have I misread something?
Madam Chair, I'm going to share my screen again. Is my screen shared, Madam Chair?
Not yet. Okay, now it's coming up. We can see.
Is it shared now?
Yes.
Mr. Ackerman, I'm going to try to answer your question by going back to a map. When this property was originally annexed into the city, let me see if I can get a better map here. This parcel extended further to the north and all the way across about like this and down like this. And Mark Garland, who was the environmental coordinator back in that time period, indicated that that property should be designated as conservation. It was in the original land use and zoning proposal that was done, and subsequently the city actually acquired this land. In fact, the city owns this property with the RM on it and probably should rezone it to conservation and put a land use of conservation on it now. But at any rate, yes, this extended further over and was in fact, as I said, part of the parcel. he determined that the most environmentally significant features were all north of that power line. And this is basically, if we can go, I'm going to try to find the power line easement, that they were all north of this power line. And so that's why the city acquired all of this area. There are some wetlands on the property over here, and that's another reason why we're requesting sort of the more intense, higher density, such that we can cluster development away from the wetlands area. And Mr. Ackerman, may I ask, did I respond to all your questions?
Yes, tell me about the two historic structures that are not eligible for.
I'm going to defer to Lily on that and stop sharing my screen. I believe that was her report.
Yes, Liliana Kaluri is our environmental coordinator. She is on the Zoom call and she can speak to that.
Great, welcome,
Hey,
Lily.
The information about the archaeological sites and the historic structures was just obtained by putting in a request to the Florida Master Site File database. And what it means is basically that there were records that they were there in the past. I'm not sure of their current status, but they were deemed insignificant and not eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. There is one archaeological site that they deem may be potentially eligible, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything yet without further investigation, which if that area were to be impacted, obviously a cultural resource assessment would be done by the applicant.
And Ms. Cagliari and Mr. Ackerman, I would add that with all the construction that's going to go on and planning with the extension of Southwest 62nd Boulevard, I would assume that any of those studies would be related to that also. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We do have a couple of more questions. Mr. Newman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Lazari, can you talk to me about the need for this land use change, particularly related to the relative availability of proposed land use categories? Because that's one of the criteria that we're supposed to use, and I don't see anything in the staff report, and sometimes in some of your presentations you've outlined, you know, why from like a land use perspective versus a, you know, we'd like to do this perspective, why this is needed.
Yes, I'd like to try to explain that. Part of the need, as we've indicated, is that the land is impacted by certain circumstances, the power line easements and the construction of the road, which will lessen the amount of developable land. So that is part of the need for the higher density. In terms of the overall amount of urban mixed use high in the community and how much of it's already developed, I believe that Ms. McMullen's staff report included that, and I don't want to quote her, but I believe that this is adding that there's only about 40% of that type of land undeveloped, and I'm going to turn it over to her to correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, I'm trying to pull up the staff report so I can get that exact number here. Apologize. It might just take a second.
And while she's pulling that up, I have one last question, and again, it may be in some of this, and I just didn't focus on it. Is do you have like a projected map showing with all of the estimated setbacks and boundaries of everything, what is going to be developable on this parcel after everything is done and you guys have to sort of meet the strategic ecosystem requirements?
I don't have a map that I could show you. I could pull up the justification report and show you where the wetlands are and where the floodplain is. Basically, the wetlands are in that northwest corner near where the power line easement on the western property line was. And it's my understanding that the city's project to build the Southwest 62nd Boulevard extension will involve mitigation of some of that wetland area. So I think, you know, that's part of the issue. Maybe Lily has something to add on this.
Yeah, if you want, I can share my screen. I have a decent-ish wetlands map that can maybe help visualize this a little bit better. So this is a map showing the wetland layers, and then in the old environmental report from 2007, based on the site investigation, the habitats that were considered high quality were pretty much limited to the wetland areas, not necessarily the uplands. So it'd be approximately like Onelia said, this area north of the power line easement. And that high quality habitat is what we would want to give preference to for the conservation set aside, especially if it connects to conservation lands to the north.
So, and again, this, I haven't looked at this closely in a while, so I guess, so the strategic ecosystem, does that equal the boundary of the wetland?
No, the strategic ecosystem were basically large swaths of privately owned forested land that were surveyed by drive-by surveys in the 80s and assessed for conservation potential. This map here shows the boundary of the strategic ecosystem. So it encompasses pretty much the western half of the parcel. It has nothing to do with wetland boundaries or anything, more to do with the property boundaries at the time, or the boundaries of where forested land was.
Yeah.
But yeah, the wetlands would be located within that strategic ecosystem boundary
Right.
on this parcel.
Yeah, and I was one of the, at that point in time, I was doing some of the field work for some of that a long time ago, so I'm very aware of I'm very aware of some of the facts that we just were doing drive-bys and doing the best we could at the time. But I guess my question, and this sort of gets to, if possible, I was looking for like a visualization of that, you know, they can only, is this true, that they can only develop on 50% of the uplands within the strategic ecosystem, and if so, you know, so how much does that sort of cut out of that total area in terms of them to be able to develop?
So it's not actually a hard limit of 50%. The way the code is written states that up to 50% of the upland areas on the site may be required for protection of strategic ecosystem resources. So in this case, where most of the valuable habitat is wetland, it wouldn't necessarily meet that upland requirement. You know, we may, you know, if for example, like that archaeological site, if they do some survey work there and it comes back that it may be important to preserve some of that area, you know, that may be considered towards that requirement, but there's not like a hard, you know, okay, we're going to take 50% of your uplands, whether they're habitat or not, just because they're in the strategic ecosystem. It really depends what's out there and what the natural resource survey comes back with.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then Ms. McMullen, I don't know if you found it, but the land use information is on page 7 of the staff report. I think, does Mr. Hurst have a comment or his hand raised on the Zoom?
Mr. Hurst, can you let us know if you had a comment?
What's your number for you?
I did, but my question was answered with the last series of comments from the presenter.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, yes, and I do have, so in the staff report where it talks about the need for additional land in the proposed land use category, so the GIS analysis that we do for this is basically taking a look at how many acres are currently within that land use category, and then we look at how many of those acres are occupied. So currently about 84% of the acreage that is within that land use category in the city is occupied or developed.
Okay, thank
So.
you. And then it looks like Mr. Ackerman.
I was just going to comment, or to ask Ms. Coleri. My understanding is if we approve this land use change, that the ecological and other surveys are 40 years old and would be redone at the point of any kind of development order.
Yes, that's correct. Basically, I just want to point out that the information that we've been showing you here today is pretty like high level, very generalized data. When a development application comes in on a parcel like this, they're actually required to do what we call a natural areas resource assessment. And they have to have a consultant go in on the ground and field verify everything, where the wetland boundaries are, where there's significant upland habitat, if there's listed species habitat, stuff like that. And then we make our decisions on any buffers or conservation set-asides based on that ground truthed data, not just what you're seeing on maps.
And I did want to add to that, that again, as part of the construction process and planning, development, and design of the Southwest 62nd Boulevard extension, I think they have already started some of the wetland research on the property that will be acquired for right-of-way. And so that will supplement whatever the developer has to do in terms of the report that Ms. Coleri just mentioned.
Thank you. Any other board member comments before we go to the public? Okay, seeing none. Are there any members of the public here with us that would like to speak to this petition?
And I did have a comment.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see your light. I apologize.
Yeah, I was just gonna say after just listening to some of the discussion that I would only feel comfortable changing the land use of the parcels currently zoned residential medium density, but not the other ones, given that they're in that that part of the ecosystem. And I read through the memo briefly, and according to that memo, it ranks highly as in terms of ecosystem benefits. I also noted that it's somewhat connected, although divided by a road there, to the southwestern portion of the rest of that conservation area. So again, I'd be comfortable approving the land use change just for those two parcels that are currently designated residential medium density. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone on the phone from the public to speak to this item?
No, Madam Chair, there's nobody on the line at this time.
Okay. Then bringing it back to the board, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've sort of been torn thinking about this. I've always been a huge supporter of the urban village concept, and I think that it's the right kind of development for this area. I'm concerned about the strategic ecosystem and the wetland and having too much development pressure allocated. We want when they exactly step down the number of units that are allowed on the property are going to be allocated for the total area, not just the area that is upland and not strategic ecosystem. I also think that to the south we've got business industrial, which is generally developed pretty sparsely at very low floor area ratio. It could go up to 5 stories in a floor area ratio of 4, but we don't typically see that in the BI zoning. And then to the north, we've got, of course, 1 unit per 5 acres, if any. Nothing's going to be developed there because it's owned by the city. I just think that from the center of the urban village towards the interstate, we should have a transition in density. I was going to suggest that we recommend the urban mixed use category instead of the urban mixed use high. So urban mixed use allows 60 units per acre by right and 4 to 5 stories, whereas what the applicants requested and what staff's recommending allows 100 units by right and 6 to 8 stories, that higher number being with special use permit. I like Ms. Krugato's suggestion. I'm not sure we want residential low, however, adjacent to the redeveloped Southwest 62nd. So maybe the split that makes sense would be to have the property that's currently residential medium go to urban mixed use, which is that 60 units per acre, 4 to 5 stories, and then a little bit further west, the property that's currently residential low, make something, what I think makes the most sense would be mixed use residential, which allows zoning up to U5, which is a slightly less intense zoning designation, but still has that urban character that we're looking for in the urban village. But it would get us a transition from the higher density to the lower density along the street. So those are the ideas that I'm thinking about. But I share, I don't know that Mr. Newman really expressed concerns about the petition, but he asked a lot of probing questions. I sort of took that as an indication that maybe he's concerned about the strategic ecosystem. I share that, and then I share very literally Ms. Krugato's concern.
Is there a possibility to allocate the higher density to the entire parcel, but then designate that the density needs to be focused onto the current residential medium parcel? So again, if we could shift the balance away from the more sensitive ecological areas and still maintain the density, you know, kind of in that edge that's the closest to the current village side, would that achieve the end result of both the applicant and kind of the ecological footprint? Is that a possibility to do that?
I don't think we can put conditions like that on the zoning, but due to the circumstances of the property, that's going to happen naturally by code requirements.
Right, okay.
Beyond the city code, the county requires a 75-foot wetland buffer. Obviously, you're bringing, I don't know if it's going to be designated an arterial road or a collector road, but whatever that is going to have setbacks and things required as well. So to some degree, that's going to happen naturally on this property. The codes just require it.
And I think that's something that we as the plan board sometimes struggle with, this idea that there's still all these checkpoints that kind of happen after we talk about something like this. I mean, it's certainly important to talk about all the steps, but I mean, at this point, we're kind of only being asked one thing. Okay.
Mr. Ackerman.
Ultimately, it's unclear how much of that property is developable because the ecological and archaeological features are going to have to be, you know, ground truth, basically. Someone's going to have to go down there and find out, then they're going to have to meet the code requirements, the setback. So I do agree. I'm not uncomfortable the way this petition is right now because I think it gives a lot of flexibility to get some density as a result of having apparently substantial portions of this property is going to be undevelopable. It is adjacent to the southern part of it is adjacent or in close proximity to Butler. My sense is that they end up getting more flexibility, will probably get a better result if they have the ability to increase density in some places and compensate for the low to non-density and conservation in others. So I'm pretty much going to support petition as it is.
Okay. And I know another representative of the landowners here, Mr. Williams, did you want to speak? You just had your hand up.
Yes, I just had most of the John Williams
application. I know a lot of your concerns come around the ecological western portion of the property that has been ground truthed, and we've got some reports on that. There's out of that 8 acres, in best case, 2 to 2.5 acres, where it's actually ecologically sensitive north of the power line easement. Most everything else has already been taken by the city through the development or donated through development, and probably will be with the development of that parcel.
bringing it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
excuse me. I wanted to respond to one of the questions that came up earlier in terms of whether the density could be allocated over to other properties. The westernmost property that's currently residential low is in separate ownership from the other two parcels that are over to the east of that. So no, we can't do that because it's in separate ownership. I wanted to further point out that this western property is contiguous to the interstate and will be contiguous to the new Southwest 62nd Boulevard extension. It's going to be limited in terms of uses as just residential. And it's got that business industrial immediately to the south of it also. I would suggest that you leave it with the request in terms of the urban mixed use high and put the urban village designation on it, which will guarantee better development on the property. And the city's environmental regulations as set up with the natural and archaeological ordinance that's already in the code and the wetlands ordinances will protect whatever developable land is available on that site.
Thank you. Mr. Newman.
I'm channeling my inner Commissioner Sutton. Was there any discussion about? I guess I'm struggling to try to sort of to come around to supporting the petition as it is, and I think the principles of what we're trying to do. I think we're all in the same point. I think we understand there's some unique constraints of this, and we want something to be done, and it should it should be different than what it is. I don't know. I'm struggling with that. So I guess has there been any discussion around maybe either maybe reaction to what Board Member Hawkins suggested, or whether trying to think about this as a PUD or something like this, or is that just not something that you guys would be thinking about? I think we want, or I want to work with the landowner and the petitioners to try to get something. Right now I don't know. I don't know if this is. I don't know what the ramifications of this is. Like sometimes it's pretty easy to see. For this, I'm just having a little hard time trying to figure out what the end of this is going to look like, and is that really what is best, is the best solution? So.
Any other thoughts, Mr. Hawkins?
I'm prepared to make a motion just to see. It'll give us a sense where we are.
Okay.
Were you going to speak though? I didn't want to interrupt you.
No.
So the motion that I'll make is the one that I described earlier. Instead of the existing recommendation, change the eastern portion that's currently residential medium to urban mixed use, which is 5 stories. Sorry, let's make sure we get this right. Which is 4 to 5 stories with an additional 1 to 2 stories through a height bonus system, right? So potentially 7-story buildings, which is less than the potentially 8-story buildings in urban mixed use high. So we're getting that downward transition. And then on the part that's residential low, mixed use medium residential, which is up to 75 units per acre and up to 4 stories. So again, still intense urban development, but lower than the urban mixed use. So we get a transition and continuing to extend the urban village standards there, so we have the same standards that apply in the rest of the urban village, which I think that strikes the right balance in really adding a tremendous amount of development potential, but getting a transition from the urban center of the urban village towards its edge. So I'll make the motion super clear. I move the board approve petition PB-19-145 LUC with 2 modifications. 1, The property that currently has a residential medium of future land use, we would propose changing to urban mixed use. And the property that currently has a residential low future land use, we would propose changing to mixed use residential.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion, since we're sort of changing the recommendation here? Everybody feel okay moving forward with the vote? Is that amenable? It would still be transect zones, right? It would still be transect zones. It would just be a lower number. So is that okay? Okay. With that, Ms. McMullen, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Ms.
I
Lazar.
believe that Mr. Hurst has his hand raised and I had my hand raised
Oh,
also.
sorry, we can't
Sorry about that.
see that. Ms. McMullen's been hitting her button, but she may have had a different screen up.
Yeah, I did, sorry.
Okay, so I don't know who had their hand raised first. Mr. Persons, do you want to chime in since you haven't yet?
Oh, no, I'm good. I'll let
Oh, okay.
Mr. Hurst and Ms. Lazari.
Oh, Mr. Hurst, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just, I was looking at the land use map, future land use map. Is it even possible to do that on the western portion, what's being proposed? Because a lot of it is wet. I'm looking at the wetlands map, because I have the pleasure of doing that while I'm at home, but a lot of that portion of that map is wet. Is it even possible to do what we're asking and as an amendment?
Will the land use, changing the land use is not going to change the regulations on the wetlands. Those regulations are gonna stay the same no matter what the land use category is. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
regardless-
guess what I'm trying to get at is that to give one portion of designation, another portion of different designation is almost pointless then, right? Because if it's wet, then what's the point?
Yeah, regardless of the designation, they still have to meet the same 75-foot buffer requirement for the countywide code. It doesn't matter, really.
It just allows
Plus,
more
there's still the
density.
preservation requirement for the strategic ecosystem as well.
It just allows that density to be on the developable area.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
So you can,
Yep.
you have undeveloped portions and then that density can be lent to the developable area, if you will.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, was there
Gotcha.
another hand up or did we get everybody? Ms. Lazari, did you have something else?
Yes, I just wanted to comment on the mixed-use residential for the western parcel, again, pointing out that it is right up abutting to the interstate and what will be the extension of Southwest 62nd Boulevard, which will be a busy collector, possibly a minor arterial. The mixed-use residential is very limited in terms of what the non-residential uses are for property. And I would like the planning board to consider that issue. And, you know, if you're not going to support the urban mixed use high, at least put a more amenable type of land use on it that would allow for non-residential use.
I'll let Mr. Hawkins respond first since it was his suggestion, and then we'll get to
Yeah,
Mr. Blythe, if that's okay.
So my question, Ms. Lazari, would be if the idea is we want to transition from the center of the urban village to the edge of the urban village, and urban mixed use would be, let me double check it again. I keep saying it, but I keep forgetting. Would be 4 to 5 stories with an additional 1 to 2, and then this mixed use residential is up to 4 stories, and has the mixed use that it allows is office, but it doesn't allow like commercial, so it wouldn't allow fast food type things that I don't know what people would want to build on Southwest 62nd, but it would allow offices and things like that. Is there a future land use category you would recommend that gets us that transition in height? I mean, 4 stories is still That's the most intense stuff that's in the urban village now is about that height. So it's not a lightweight zoning designation.
Well, again, we are contiguous to the existing urban village with the U9 transit zoning and the urban mixed use high land use designation. And while I generally understand the idea of going away from the center of something to the edge and transitioning down in density or intensity, in this case, we're transitioning to the interstate. And a new principal arterial or minor collector or whatever that's going to be constructed in that area. So I think that something of, first of all, the entire concept of the urban village, and I believe the urban mixed use high for this area, is that it redevelop over time. And so we're not looking at what's there today. What we're looking at is for the longer term as it develops. And part of that development will occur when 62nd Boulevard is extended. And again, we're right up against, to the south, that business industrial. I do not think that the mixed use residential land use only permitting office and sort of, higher density, and I understand that it is 75 units per acre, but there need to be more non-residential type uses allowed on that property, with the understanding, again, that it's up against the most intense highway facility that this community has in it, which is I-75.
What non-residential land uses would you suggest are appropriate for this property that are not allowed in residential mixed use? Or in the
Well, since
in
it
the
only
mixed use
allows,
residential?
yeah, since it only allows the office type of uses, I would suggest that if you're going to do something like that, that you would put either the business industrial on it and leave it out of the urban village type of thing, or that you at least put the urban mixed use on it that you're suggesting for the property to the east of it. I do not think that it is appropriate to put the mixed use residential on it at this point.
Okay,
Okay,
that's fine.
all right. We have a couple of other lights. So Mr. Blythe, I think you, well, no, somebody who's number 5. Yep, that's you. Mr. Blythe is next.
That answered some of my questions. Again, I was seeing it as kind of a mixed parcel, kind of a, is there something at grade level that makes sense with the extension of the road that's maybe more commercially based, whether it's retail or food or, even office. And then maybe it's residential mixed with something else, so if it can go up. It just feels like it is at this very interesting kind of connection of 75, which, is probably not super desirable to live right up against. But if you're trying to create kind of the boundary edge of a more urban village area, if we're thinking ahead, limiting that by not allowing certain non-residential uses would impact, maybe what could be put there. It may feel very singular as opposed to a very mixed kind of option. That would be my concern with taking away the ability for future flexibility, knowing that almost half of that parcel, the westernmost parcel, appears to be undevelopable. So you're kind of left with not much left, I guess, is what I'm kind of getting at.
Okay, Mr. Ackerman?
I kind of preempted what I said, but I understand the concept of stepping down to from a high density area to a lower density area, but we're stepping down theoretically to I-75. There is no adjacent land use districts that will be affected by having the same density all the way through. It's I-75. This is one of those weird districts that comes to an abrupt end, whether we want it to or not, because it's going to bump against a major interstate. So it doesn't make much sense to me to be concerned about stepping down. And it also doesn't make much sense to me to restrict what's going to be available against 75 and along 62nd Boulevard, the new 62nd Boulevard. Thank you.
Sophia?
Thank you. I think where I'm seeing it is less about that transition, because you're right. I mean, you're stepping down to a super busy highway, and I'm seeing it more in terms of the intensity and the ecological impact that this is going to have. And the more I'm hearing of this 62nd Boulevard and all these things, I'm like, I feel like there's just going to be so much impact on this ecosystem right here that I'm like, how can we minimize that as much as possible? And I understand that, beyond this decision, any development that's proposed is going to go through any other code requirements and go through sustainable development. But I think at this point here, the impact, at least that I would like to see, or that I feel as though we can make, is reducing that impact as much as possible on that specific part of the parcel, or the area that is being applied for petition right now. So while mixed use maybe might not be the best option, I'm still open, to considering how we can get to a point where we're just not allowing such an intense use on this sensitive area that's already going to be seeing a really intense impact from these Southwest 62nd Boulevard improvements and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, we have a motion on the table. Do we want to take a vote and see where that ends up? I'm not seeing any more lights, so I think that's where we're at. Ms. McMullen, can you do a roll call vote?
Yes.
And the motion was, maybe you can repeat the split zoning recommendation, or the split land use, recommendation.
Yes, so the motion was to approve with modifications, to change the properties with the existing land use of RM to urban mixed use, and the properties with RL would be mixed use medium residential. Is that right?
That's what I had written down.
The name of the category is mixed use residential.
Mixed use residential, okay. Okay, sorry. Alrighty. Ackerman.
No.
Sutton.
I can't vote on
Oh,
this.
sorry. Newman.
Yes.
Hawkins.
Yes.
Blythe.
No.
Hurst.
Yes.
And Corrigetto.
Yes.
All right, so 4 yeses, 2 noes. Motion passes.
Okay. Thank you. So moving on to the next item, I guess, your staff report's going to sort of present it one way, but that's not going to be consistent with the land use recommendation. I guess we'll go through the motions on the zoning presentation as is, and then I would imagine we'll have a motion that would follow the land use that was just voted in. So just keep that in mind
Yes,
as we move forward, board members.
Right, so yeah, the staff recommendation, let me go ahead and pull this up, on the next one was to adopt the U9 transect zone, consistent with that land use that was proposed for all of the properties. So I'll go through this pretty quickly. We obviously know the details about the property itself. So the existing zoning, it's also got mixed zoning districts. So a portion of the property is zoned RMF5, which is single multifamily up to 12 dwelling units per acre. Another portion is zoned RMF7, which is 8 to 14 dwelling units per acre. And another portion of the property, it looks like farthest to the east, is RMF8, which is 8 to 20 dwelling units per acre. So the request is to rezone the property from those zoning districts to urban 9 transect zone, and that would allow 100 dwelling units per acre by right and 125 per acre with a special use permit. We already talked about the strategic ecosystems at the property, and based on the review criteria in the land development code, staff was recommending approval of the U9 district as an extension of the existing zoning in Urban Village. And that concludes my presentation, but yeah, let me know, let me go ahead and pull up the code section that talks about what zoning districts can go with what land uses. I think that'll be helpful.
That would be great.
Because we will need to look at specifically what zoning categories would be appropriate for that portion that was recommended for, that had the different recommendation. So, see if I can make it big enough for you to see here.
So, the mixed use residential would be U5, and the urban mixed use, there's a choice.
Yes,
U6
so
to
it
U8
looks like for the portion that the land use would be mixed use residential, the option would be the U5 transect zone, and then the urban mixed use portions could go with U6, U7, or U8. And I can pull up the table on those transect zones just so you can see the differences in densities there and heights. And then I'm not sure if Ms. Lazari would like to add anything. I'm sure she had a presentation for this as well.
Yeah, maybe just give us a second to look at this table first. And I'm gonna repeat this request that I've made before, but I would love to have a copy of the code on these computers, since these computers can't get online. It's kind of frustrating that we can't pull the code up. If we can get a PDF version or access to the internet so we can look at it on Unicode, that would be excellent.
Yeah, I'm working on access to the internet actually, so.
Yeah, so that would be really helpful, like the code and the comp plan.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Would be helpful to have.
I'm hoping to have that by next month, so.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, is everyone okay with going to Ms. Lazari and seeing if she has anything to share? Ms. Lazari, are you on the Zoom?
Madam Chair, I am, and I had a presentation that was related to rezoning to a zoning district that is related to the urban mixed use high. I think that it is, given the previous motion that passed, it's probably not productive to show that presentation. Just again, I would indicate that that area next to I-75 and the new 62nd Boulevard extension, despite whatever environmental limitations might have been there, it still strikes me that it would have been better with the urban mixed use high and the U9 transect zoning on it. In terms of what we have at this point with the urban mixed use recommendation on the eastern parcels that were RMF 7 and 8, If we have to select a zoning, I would recommend the U8 transect to get the higher density. And there is no choice on the mixed use residential. That just has to be U5 is my understanding.
Thank you, Ms. Lazari. Do any board members have questions for staff or the applicant before we go to the public? Okay. Is anyone in the room here that would like to comment on this item? Okay, not seeing any. Is there anyone on the phone lines?
No, Madam Chair, there's nobody on the line at this time. Floor is yours.
Great. Bringing it back to the board for a motion then, or discussion. Mr. Hawkins.
Madam Chair, consistent with Ms. Lazari's suggestion, I move the plan board recommend to the City Commission approval of petition PB-19-146ZOM with 2 modifications, and 1, the portion of the property that we recommended have a future land use designation of mixed use residential, we recommend have a zoning designation of U5, and 2, the portion of the property that we recommended have a future land use designation of urban mixed use, we recommend have a zoning designation of U8.
Second.
Okay, a second from Mr. Newman. Ms. McMillan, can you do a roll call vote on that, please?
Ackerman,
I'm reluctantly voting yes, not because I think it's a great idea, but because it needs to agree with the land use that we passed in the previous petition. So yes.
okay. Newman,
Yes.
Hawkins,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
and Corriero.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, Ms. McMillan, to read the next item into the record. You get to do it all today.
Did I even read that last one into the record?
I think so.
Sorry, I'm losing it.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I am losing it over here a little bit. All right. Okay, next item, PB 19-144 LUC, City of Gainesville, amend the City of Gainesville future land use map from Alachua County Tourist and Entertainment to City of Gainesville Commercial, generally located south of parcel number 06800006001, west of Interstate 75, north of Southwest Archer Road, and east of Southwest 43rd Street. And we have Bedez Massey on the Zoom call with us for this presentation.
Great.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the City Plan Board. This is Bedez Massey of the city's Planning Division within the Department of Sustainable Development. At this moment, I'd like to share my screen with you so that I can show you a very brief PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, welcome, Ms. Massey. It's been a while.
Thank you.
You can share your screen. We'll let you know when we can see it come up. We aren't seeing it quite yet. Okay, we can see your screen now, Ms. Massey.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, thank you for your patience. This petition is a city-initiated small-scale amendment to the future land use map of the city's comprehensive plan, and it's filed under Legistar number 191037 and also petition number PB 19-144 LUC. The picture that you see on the screen is a view of the structure on the subject property, which is the Country Inn and Suites Hotel. This is a view of the hotel looking north from Southwest Archer Road. The next slide shows a few key points to be made about this petition. And they are, first of all, even though this is a city-initiated petition, it is privately owned property. It's located near I-75. Actually, it's west of I-75 to be exact, north of Southwest Archer Road, and east of Southwest 43rd Street. It consists of approximately 1.79 acres, which puts it well below the maximum threshold allowed for classification as a small-scale land use map amendment. The current use, as mentioned earlier, is a hotel, the Country Inn and Suites Hotel, and the subject property was voluntarily annexed into the city of Gainesville, January 3rd of 2019. The legislative history consists of a city-adopted ordinance for the annexation that was approved unanimously by a vote of 7-0. And finally, along with this petition, there is a companion rezoning petition also on tonight's agenda that I'll be addressing next. So basically, if adopted, this petition will change the current Alachua County Tourist Entertainment Future Land Use category on the subject property to a City of Gainesville Commercial Future Land Use category. And what you see on the screen are two maps, one showing you on the left the current future land use categories, both within Alachua County and the city, and on the right, future land use categories inclusive of the proposed commercial land, future land use category that's proposed for this property. There are also some identifications of current uses and just the names of the various adjacent uses should be a strong indication that this interchange of I-75 at Southwest Archer Road consists primarily of non-residential, commercial-oriented, highway-oriented uses. The recommendation from staff to the City Plan Board is therefore to approve petition PB 19144 LUC based on a compliance finding with all applicable review criteria that's contained in the future land use element, specifically policy 4.1.3. And the criteria is listed here and addressed in great detail in the staff report that you have received. Thank you, Madam Chair, and that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Massey. Are there any questions for staff on this petition? Okay, not seeing any. Are there any members of the public here that would like to speak to this item? Okay, do we have anyone on the phone lines to speak to this item?
No, Madam Chair, nobody on the lines. The floor is yours.
Bringing it back to the board then. Mr. Newman, are you reaching for your button?
Sorry, I was just trying to look for the
That's okay.
recommendation. So, yeah. So I move to approve this amendment, 191037 underscore PB 19144 LUC 24-2221.
Okay, a second. And Ms. Corrado, can we do a roll call vote on this, please? Ms. McMullen?
Ackerman?
Yes.
Sutton?
Yes.
Newman?
Yes.
Hawkins?
Yes.
Wise?
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
Corrigetto.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Can you read the next item into the record, Ms. McMullen?
PB 19147 ZON, City of Gainesville, rezone property from Alachua County Business, Tourist, and Entertainment, BR1, to City of Gainesville General Business, BUS, generally located south of parcel number 06800006001, west of Interstate 75, north of Southwest Archer Road, and east of Southwest 43rd Street.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen again.
Yes, please do. We'll let you know when we can see it. Okay. We're
Thank
ready
you.
to go.
Madam Chair and members of the City Plan Board, this is the companion rezoning petition, which is also city initiated. And it also involves the same property, the property occupied by the Country Inn and Suites located in West Gainesville near I-75 and Southwest Archer Road. This rezoning petition is filed under Legistar number 191038 and petition number PB 19147 ZON. The key points to be made are the same as those made earlier when reviewing the petition for the amendment to the future land use map. Only this time what you'll note is that the companion petition is the previous amendment to the future land use map. If adopted, this petition would amend the zoning map of the city by changing the current Alachua County Business, Tourist, and Entertainment, or BR1 zoning district on the subject property to the City of Gainesville General Business, or BUS zoning district. The recommendation from staff is to approve this petition based on a finding of compliance with all of the applicable review criteria contained in Article 3, Division 2, Section 30-3.14 of the City Land Development Code. And as with the future land use amendment petition, all of the criteria listed here has been addressed in the staff report for this petition. Thank you again, and Madam Chair, that concludes staff's presentation for the rezoning petition. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you or the board members might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff from board members? Okay, not seeing any. Mr. Newman?
I move to approve PBA-119-147 ZON 4-22-21.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Ackerman. Before we vote, does anyone from the public wish to speak to this item that's here in the room? Okay, anyone on the phones for this item?
Madam Chair, there is nobody on the lines at this time.
Excellent. Ms. McMullen, would you mind doing a roll call vote?
Ackerman,
Yes.
Sutton,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Hawkins,
Yeah.
Blythe,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
and Corrigetto. Motion passes.
Thank you. Can you read the next item into the record, please?
Yes, so our last item on the agenda is the determination of the status of a legally non-conforming use for a property located in the U8 Transept Zone, located at 1516 North Main Street. And I will be sharing a presentation on this, so let me go ahead and pull that up. So just to kind of preface this, I do think this may be the first time that the board has seen such a request. So we're going to go over the code requirements a little bit in this presentation, and we'll be here to assist as well. So this is a staff request for the board to make a determination on the status of a legally non-conforming use at 1516 North Main Street. This is some background information on the property. Again, the property's location. For some reason, the property size didn't stay in there, but it's about a half acre in size. The zoning district is U8, and the existing land use at the property is urban mixed use. The property does have a history of code violations. This is just provided for your information for background on the property. You know, keep in mind, we're not here to make any determinations on any open codes cases tonight, but there is one open code violation at the property related to a housing violation, and the notes on this codes case indicate that at the time of the citation, it was the location of a homeless camp. Those were the notes that were in the system on this. But that's just to give you just a background on the property. We're not here to make determinations about that tonight. So some information on prior approvals. There was a zoning compliance approval form signed off on originally by the planning department in 2015 with this site plan attached. So this is when it appears that the auto sales use began for Community Overdrive, which appears to be the last user at the location. So subsequent zoning compliance approvals have been issued since, which just confirmed that the use was permitted in the zoning district at the time. So the property did used to be zoned BA, Business Automotive. It was rezoned with the citywide rezoning and now has Transect Zone U8. So this is the layout that was originally attached to the zoning approval in 2015, and then these are some screenshots from Google Street View of the use as it was operating in May and July of 2019. So the reason we're looking at whether or not the use of outdoor storage specifically can continue at the property is because of zoning and comprehensive plan requirements. So on the right side here is a table of permitted uses within transect zones. So you can kind of see here, not sure if it's actually big enough for you to see or not, but the table shows that vehicle sales and rental is a permitted use, however, no outdoor display can occur. So what that means is automobile sales can occur at the location, but if those cars are stored on site, they have to be within an enclosed building. So, so those conditions don't exist on the site today. I believe it used to be a gas station a while back, and then it was converted to this use for auto sales. Then basically when the property got rezoned, that use became non-conforming. And, you know, in addition to the land development code, the comprehensive plan also specifically calls out that the city shall continue to restrict auto sales and relatively intense auto service to North Main Street and north of 16th Avenue. And this property is just south of that location. So the land development code establishes regulations for non-conforming uses, and it states that a non-conforming use is considered to be abandoned if the use ceases for a continuous period equaling or exceeding 9 months. The review criteria asks us to look at evidence including public records, utility records, property records, verified personal records, or other general research and documentation to demonstrate that the use has not been abandoned. And the code calls out that the intent of the owner or user shall not be relevant in determining whether the use has been abandoned. So some of the documentation that staff did receive, we did receive a GRU bill from the previous user at the site, as well as some screenshots of some Facebook posts. Facebook posts seem to indicate that the property was being used for vehicle sales up till at least April 24th, 2020. And GRU history appears to indicate that the usage for electricity at the building dropped off for around that time as well. So at this point, the code directs that the city plan board shall make a determination as to the status of the non-conforming use of outdoor storage and display based on the available evidence. So the burden of proof, the code does call out the burden of proof as being on the property owner. So you can use any evidence provided to you before or after this hearing. And I do know that the property owner has a representative here this evening to share some information with you. So you'll want to use that information as well in making this determination. And so the determination that you are making is specifically related to the outdoor storage and display, as that is no longer an allowable use in this zoning district. Staff did not find that the evidence we received up to this point would substantiate that it was not out of use for a period of 9 months or longer. The code directs us to now have the board look at the evidence and make a determination. So Andrew and I are, obviously here to help with any questions. I know this is sort of a new type of application for the board, or sort of unusual from the type of things we normally look at. So we are here to help.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff on this?
Yes. I didn't fully understand what you said the staff had found. Can you please repeat that part, Brittany?
Sure. So based on the evidence provided, staff did not feel that that evidence showed that the use of auto sales at the property had continued past April of last year, basically. So we had come to the determination that it had been not in use for at least 9 months. And that is the main question here today. So it's sort of a unique code situation.
Can I just ask, like, what brought this to your attention? Because I imagine there's circumstances like this in other places around the city, right?
Sure.
Where non-conforming uses have been abandoned and we're not, like, going through this process. Is it a code like a code enforcement issue that's bringing it here? Like, what's bringing it to us? Because it is sort of a unique thing for us to see.
Yeah, I think what brought it to this point is there was a change of ownership, and the current property owner was trying to get approval to continue the use of the outdoor storage for cars, and staff had let him know that it's no longer allowed. So then this question came up as to, can we consider it a legally non-conforming use? Does it fall within the guidelines that the code allows us to consider it that? And if we do hear evidence tonight that, can show that it was in continuous use, then we can establish that it can remain and operate there.
Or that it's been less than 9 months. 9
Right.
months is the trigger. Okay.
Yes. I don't know if,
thank you. Mr. Ackerman, I think has another
I
question.
have just one question. It's not clear to me. Are we trying to determine whether they've continued auto sales, or and is outdoor storage a separate category for that?
So the autos, sorry, was that you, Andrew?
It was, but go ahead.
Yeah, so the automobile sales is a permitted use in U8. The only thing that's at question here is whether or not they can store the cars outside at the property. So when the code changed and the transect zones were adopted, the use of automobile sales was determined to be appropriate for transect zones only if you can't see the cars, basically. So you'd have to have you'd have to construct a new building to house like cars in a showroom, basically, type of situation. So the options here, they can still, they could operate as an automobile dealership, but not store the cars here, store them on another site. Or there are, a lot of other uses allowed in the U8 transect zone as well. But the only issue at hand here is just the storage of the cars and being able to store them outside of an enclosed building.
Or there's a process in the code section that even if it's abandoned, they can get reinstatement of it as well.
Yes, thank you.
That's correct.
Yes, so if the board does determine that the use is abandoned, the applicant or the property owner has the option of applying to reinstate the use, which would go through the process of a special use permit. So basically, it's kind of a two-step process. So the first step is it abandoned? The second step, if it is abandoned, would be the property owner can request to reinstate. And at that point, you would look at a lot of different consideration. Well, basically the type of considerations you look at with a special use permit.
Okay.
Did you want to add anything, Andrew?
No, that's I think you said it well. As I think the chair indicated, this code provision is a little bit strange because we're not, as staff, sort of out patrolling, the city for legal non-conforming uses, ceasing. So when these things get brought to our attention, it's usually when a use has been abandoned for a period of time, and then maybe the property changes hands and a new property owner comes in, applies, and then finds out that the length of time has exceeded what the code provides for. As Ms. McMullen indicated, I think in my 8-9 years in the city, I think this is the first time we've ever brought this forward. So it's a little bit of a new thing for us as well. And as the chair and Ms. Mullen stated, if the plan board does determine that the use has been abandoned, there is a process by which the property owner can apply to the plan board to reestablish that with a special use permit, which would also provide the ability to have conditions on the reestablished non-conforming use as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ackerman, did you have a question?
Just a brief question for Mr. Persons. In general, the existence of non-conforming uses is disfavored, is that correct? Meaning
that is correct.
There's a process that's intended to have those uses eventually come into conformance. So being this is outside the BA district, the city has an interest in having it conform.
Madam Chair, Mr. Ackerman is correct. I think when some of the factors that Ms. McMullen highlighted that pertain to automotive-oriented uses, particularly auto sales, as you saw, the policy in the comprehensive plan directs those uses to be located north of 16th Avenue on Main Street. As you can see from the pictures, this was really a gas station that had been converted to a car lot. So it's not particularly large property, and I think some of the past code issues with the previous user on the property, I think, somewhat related to the fact that it's just a small property with a lot of cars on it. So there are some suitability concerns as well, which I think is one of the reasons why things like non-conforming uses, the city's code does encourage the city to try to eliminate those.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, then we'll hear from the property owner, or representative of the property owner. Do you have a presentation?
I do. Is this gonna?
Oh, yeah, we can have them.
We don't have overhead abilities.
Oh, we don't have overhead abilities?
They do,
It looks like
actually.
we do. Yep.
Actually, yes, sorry.
Okay,
I was
perfect.
previously
Yeah,
told
go
no.
ahead. We can see it right up there.
I'm Tom Daniel, and I represent the property owner in Toyland that's trying to get a license to have an automobile sales and open display at that particular location. I want to go back up with a little history, and some of it was not provided to staff at the time that my client went down and sought to get the permits. And so I want to give you a little bit of background. The original lease, I'm just going to show you the first page.
I think, can I just recommend that you try to speak into the microphone as much as possible, because we do have a member participating remotely, and so I'm not sure if
Okay.
he's gonna be able to hear you if you aren't in the microphone.
All right, tell me where this should go, right here?
Can we go back to the overhead? Yes, then they can zoom in
Okay.
on it, I believe.
This is
There.
basically a commercial lease for the dealer that was there before. It was dated May 11th, 2018, and it provided for an end date of May 19, but it also provided for a 3-year renewal. And that was signed by the then property owner, which was Lewis Oil Company, and what became known as Community Overdrive was the DBA for the business that was there. My glasses are going to keep fogging up. So that lease was the original lease that handled them going in there. In the interim, the zoning changed, which is the zoning that's on it now, in the process between I believe the end of 17, 18, 19 is when the process began and changed. So originally, they were properly there. The next document I have is it's basically a renewal signed by Wenda Lewis, indicating that she's renewing the 3-year option on the property, and that was for Gainesville Auto Sales LLC DBA Community Overdrive. So the next document I would show is a email that I have received back March 11th from Wenda Lewis, indicating that Jason, who was Jason Bowman, that was the principal of that business, had his automobile trucks on the property until the last week of July or the first week of August of 2020, and he was slowly relocating because he was trying to do some other ancillary things there that the city didn't like, and that's what some of those code enforcement violations were there. So he's moving to a site that was more compatible with selling tires and doing some other things that he wanted to do. When we first approached the city with this, I called down to the city, talked to plan staff. They explained to me before my client bought the property that it wouldn't fit in the current category, but that it shouldn't have any problem meeting basically the grandfather clause that allowed for this property to have a non-conforming use, because it had been used as a car lot for about, up until what we thought was the August period. And then another fellow tried to get a car lot there, and he cleaned, and you saw the sign that said Willard that was up there for his automobile sales. He went down to the city and tried to apply as well. And the city told him, basically, and told DMV, you can't give this guy a car sales license with any outdoor display, so we're not going to approve it. So the city itself was basically, at that point in time, making a decision that was not appropriate. The next bill is the last utility bill for the property that was in the name of the Gainesville Auto people. And the electric for that month, which ended on I believe it was the 26th of September, was only $33. If you look at the next previous bill, which was ending on a little bit before that, the electric bill was $274. So when staff says they looked at utility bills and going back, it appeared that they weren't running the business there. It's just not true. The next bill I would submit is one that is for the month before that, and it was $161, an electric bill. and the one before that was $225. And so going back all the way to the period of time that the city even acknowledges that they were there and operating, the bill was $176. Then the month before that, $173, just for the utilities. So, unfortunately, when the client heard that they needed to provide a utility bill, they didn't think they had to provide all of them, but they did. At this point, the city has seen these bills. So, the other document that I would show you is an email from Jason Bowman, who indicates that he signed this little affidavit to it may concern on March 11th of 2021. Basically, he said he was the manager of the dealership located at that address up and through the end of September. And it was shortly after September of 2020 that the guy, Willard Baker, I believe is his name, got in there and painted it. They cleared it up. They did a good job of, fixing it up, getting all the stuff out of there and cleaning it up. So he was trying to have a dealership there, but the city pretty much blocked his ability to do that. So the only other thing I would show you is a picture that basically you can see that the building is a relatively limited opportunity for much of a business there other than a gas station. And even in today's zoning laws and the type of gas stations that you have in the city, this half-acre lot would not be nearly enough to support anybody wanting to put a gas station there. So it needs to be used. You'll see that there are a few homeless people that have been sleeping there. Try to run them out every morning, but they're there, and that's what the code violation is that's current right now. All the prior code violations had nothing to do with the fact that they were related to the car sales. They were there related to other things that prior owner was doing that were not making the city happy. So I think with the information I provided you with today in this sort of quasi-judicial forum that we find ourselves in tonight, that clearly that property has been an open display of cars. I mean, I drive by there all the time. Anybody else that's on that, going to that Publix or down Main Street down to 16th has seen that car lot there for years and years and years. And so I think the task tonight is for this board to determine that there has not been an abandonment of the use of outdoor car display and that it should then be allowed to continue under the present state of the law. If I can answer any questions, I'll be glad to.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Black.
Do you have any photos of cars on the lot for the last 9 months?
The ones up through, she indicated the postings of the car sales. I think the latest one had actually a date of May 5th. He didn't buy the property, the family didn't buy the property until this year in March. And when they were negotiating with the owner of the property, the cars that he had were moved, and Willard was there trying to establish his dealership there. So there weren't cars for that 3-month period before we closed, 4-month period before we closed.
Okay. So I live nearby and I drive by it just like it sounds like you do, and it's been vacant as long as I can remember. For it seems like over a year. It may not have been over a year, and I won't hold you to that. But the big thing here that it sounds like we're making a decision on is, was there outdoor display and sales of auto vehicles, not necessarily the intent to sell them, but were they kind of physically on site in the last 9 months? I mean, that's, I think, what we're here to kind of gauge. So a utility bill doesn't really show that to me. So I'm interested in, do you have any kind of evidence that vehicles were being displayed and being sold?
Well, I think the statements from the landowner, from the person that was there doing it, is sufficient. You know, the process that when we got involved in it was starting really in October, November, when the negotiations were going. And so at that point in time, there wasn't a license there to sell cars, and we knew that Mr. Bowman had left. I happened to know, you know, some of the problems that he had legally, and you know, it'd be nice if we did have pictures. We probably would have been in better shape, but we weren't focusing on the property until after he had left. If you take May to June, July, August, September, October, November, December, at that month, still trying to get a car lot there, should have been allowed. And then January and February, and I reached out to the city in February, seeking to get this approved and to get this moving ahead. We had a very quick negotiation with the seller, and so, you know, we were reaching out to the city at that point in time. And so the reality was, I think we were within that window of 9 months, and the utilities being on for that lengthy period of time is just one of the things that's in the actual criteria that you should be looking at. We don't have all the criteria, but again, in this case, you know, I don't know how many cars it constitutes outdoor display, but it seems to me there was stuff there as long as I can remember, until the guy Willard got in there and started cleaning it up.
Okay. I mean, again, I'll go back to utilities don't mean cars being displayed. You know, I get leaving lights on at night, running the air, running the lights inside the building. I realize it's a small building.
Yeah, it's a little tiny
None
building.
of it really indicates the,
Right.
I think, what we would be interested in seeing. I understand you don't just drive by and take pictures of properties all the time, so it's a difficult thing, but I mean, without that sort of evidence, it's tough to, you know, show, I think, what we're being asked here. So that was my question, photographic evidence.
Mr. Newman?
Yeah, is there, are there any like sales records or like inventory records or any sort of accounting that there was either previously or you know, during a period of time when your client sort of owned it, that there was anything on there?
The only record I could get from Mr. Bowman was, you know, a statement that says that, that he was there. You know, I don't have his records. I don't represent him.
Right. Well, and again, I mean, like, I've been president, CEO of companies that have done nothing for years. And it, you know, so, I mean, just saying that your manager or whatever doesn't mean that it's something that's being used for that. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I would concur, like, the utilities, and again, if there's an active business and there's sales going on, there should be some evidence that either there's sales or some records of like, hey, this car was here, you know, I have inventory, was at this location. So, yeah, and I, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm sympathetic. It sounds to me like the people who have purchased the the site and wanting to potentially sort of do the same thing may not have gotten all the information they sort of needed about the risk that is potentially there of them continuing to do that based off of previous actions of the owner or the people that were running the business. But, you know, again, like when you're part of business, is like you have to sort of do the due diligence, and, you know, all of these things are, you know, in the code, and I don't know, just, yeah, I mean, I want to, you know, I think we all want to sort of be very sympathetic to the situation, but, you know, based on what I understand, like, we need some evidence that there was actually sales or inventory or that type of business was going on. So.
Any other board questions or comments? Mr. Hawkins?
Mr. Daniels, could you show us the email that you described from Mr. Bowman and Ms. Lewis? I think that's what you said it was. I always read material before meetings, so I wasn't able to, I don't think that I'm able to fairly adjudge the evidence you provide on the little screen, but maybe that seemed like the most relevant thing, so I'd be interested in actually reading it.
So I have his statement.
Oh, did you not describe an email that said that during the month of July he was taking cars off the lot? And that's what caught my attention.
That was from the owner, from Ms. Lewis. But this is from Jason. Here's the one from Ms. Lewis.
Yeah, I can't read. If you could read, could you read that just verbatim to us so we know what it says?
It's from Wanda Lewis. Jason had automobiles/trucks on the property until the last week of July or the first week of August 2020. He was slowly relocating so he could sell tires. His office shed was on the property until the pending/new tenant bought it from him and changed the ownership around October 2020.
Well, the first time that I read that, I thought that was contemporaneous with when he was relocating, but it sounds like now maybe that's something that was written recently, looking back a year.
When we were getting to the closing table, she wrote this. This was March of 2021.
Okay. Well, it's not as persuasive evidence, I thought. I think that, I personally think that I don't know how persuasive it is if it was written 9 months later, but to me that strongly suggests that it was closed in July because he's has abandoned that location, is removing his inventory from it, and had completed by the end of July or first week in August. That certainly means that by July 23rd, the use had been abandoned. But that's my sort of reading of that evidence. But
yeah, and
again, not being contemporaneous, I don't know how.
And again, that puts us within the 9-month period.
The 9-month period would have been after July 23rd.
From when it stops.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that statement.
And maybe staff can clarify, what date should we be judging from? Maybe not from this meeting because they probably applied for this prior to this meeting. What date should we be going 9 months back from? Can staff, I don't know, Mr. Persons or Mr. Mullen?
Yeah, when the non-conforming use ceased operation, so essentially when the outdoor auto sales stopped would be when the clock would start essentially.
But what would be
I
the
guess
end?
my question is, so if he came to you, in February, but it took him 2 months to get to the board, those 2 months shouldn't necessarily count against him. So I guess I'm wondering, like, what steps were taken with city staff in the interim time? Like, the closing, it sounds like, happened in the fall. No. When did your client
This year.
close? This year?
Yeah,
okay.
First of this year. After I contacted city, and then the deed was recorded around the first part of March.
So you were aware,
Madam Chair,
you were aware of this issue when they closed?
I'm I'm sorry, I'm hearing two people
Okay,
talking.
go ahead, Mr. Persons.
Yeah, oh, I was just gonna say, the code does provide, for, any like property transactions, like the time it takes to do a property transaction.
Yeah.
To be less out of the 9-month expiration.
Yeah.
So that is something to consider
And
in
that's
terms
what-
of,
Yeah, so I'm trying to put together the timeline here a little bit, because it does say that you can, you know, that period should be less out. I think I'm trying to figure out, I know that the city takes a while to get you to a public hearing, so yeah, I'm trying to like give you the benefit
My
of the
first
doubt in
approach
that
to the
sense
city
as
was
well, so-
February, I believe it was February 11th of 2021.
and Madam Chair, just for clarification, if someone comes in and let's say fills out a zoning like verification request to the city and we sign off on it, that doesn't constitute establishing a use. I believe the application or the zoning verification that the agent is talking about was actually approved by the city for auto sales, although there was a caveat on that being auto sales as it's currently allowed in the urban 8 transect zoning, which is, you know, auto sales for indoor display only. But simply going in and filling out a one-page zoning verification form doesn't constitute reestablishing or establishing a use per the code.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome to come up.
Mr. Rajay, this is who his family purchased the property.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Rajay. I lived in Gainesville for 42 years, and currently I do have a car lot on North Main Street. I always keep it clean. The gentleman, Mr. Newman, asked if we did our homework or if we do due diligence. Yes, I did. I went to the tag office. I went to the Division of Motor Vehicle. I asked for the last transaction that the gentleman did, sold his vehicle. They did not give it to me. They said, we cannot give it to you. I called Division of Motor Vehicle in Ocala. They said, I'm sorry, we cannot give you that information. I have it in email. But I know he violated a lot of code enforcement. I did call code enforcement, Mr. John Gates. He said all the code enforcement violated by Mr. Jason, he had nothing to do with the car sales. He did tire sales, he did mechanic work there that he didn't have a permit. We asked city to allow us to put 15 to 20 cars there to sell vehicle. Today we are here not arguing about the UA zoning. We are arguing about non-conforming use. The statute says the property has to be abandoned. What's abandoned? The gentleman asked the GRU, it's not relevant. GRU is it's not cheap to keep GRU in the property. When the gentleman is there for 5-6 months until September 30th, 2020, if GRU was $10, $5 per month, I agree with you. But GRU is not cheap. So if somebody closed the business, abandoned, they're not crazy to pay GRU bill. And in September, when the gentleman cut the electricity, the next person came in, remodeled the place, painting it, and then they went to the Division of Motor Vehicle to get a license. And Division of Motor Vehicle said, we are directed by City of Gainesville not to issue a dealer license, which is not right because he was within his 9 months window. But because what he violated the law before, he had a lot of violation, I shouldn't get punished to have my dealership there. And when I called DMV, Division of Motor Vehicle in Ocala, I was told that Mr. Andrew Person already sent them an email before anybody applied there not to issue a license. So city already made their mind, they don't want a car lot there. But we're not here what they want to do or they want to see out there. We are arguing about our right non-conforming use. Did we abandon the property for 9 months? With the evidence I have, 6 months GRU bill, a statement notarized by the person before that, their continuous lease there. What else you need? We have statement, we have pictures that he advertised in May 2020, selling cars there. But just because the Division of Motor Vehicle would not give me the information that when was the last transaction done, just wanted to let you know. And we're not going to sell cars. We're not going to sell tires there. We're not going to do mechanic work. We just want to, put 15 to 20 cars there and have a clean, operation there. And if you pass by there every day, you see, I cleaned up the property. There was a shed in the property. I moved it. I cleaned the whole thing. We spend the money there just to make sure is, representable and putting the paint that goes with the neighborhood. And then Mr. John Gate yesterday morning called me, Mo, you have 5 homeless people camping in your property. And if the place is open, I shouldn't have that issue there. It's a chance for me to hire the homeless. Hey, come work for me. Come clean cars. Come do, paint the property. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mr. Blythe?
Thank you, we appreciate that, and it has been cleaned up. I was looking back at the GRU bills that we've got, and there's a lot of delinquent charges. And it seems like there's a baseline amount that's just kind of racking up whether somebody's using it or not. So the GRU part still, for me, again, I live in the city, I pay a GRU, I don't love the bills either, but the bill still isn't showing kind of that automotive sales and display are happening, especially because there's delinquent bills here as well as a baseline that is just charged whether somebody's using it or not.
Are you looking at the last bill, or are you looking at all the bills?
The one that we have in the report is 9/28/20.
Yeah, that's the last bill. The ones that I was showing you show the various amount of electric each month back, which is, that last bill was 33, the one before was 270 something, and
Right.
on and on. So really roughly around $200 to $300 a month up until the last bill.
So again, what's really important when you look at the bills is to look at the number of kilowatt hours that are being used.
Right.
So that's a really important piece of it. There's a lot of other lovely fees that are part of this. So that's a really important piece of it. But again, I go back to, standard parking lot lighting can be hundreds of dollars a month to run it from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Right.
It depends on the bulbs you have. It depends on the time clock. There's a lot of things there. So again, I go back to, was it being used? That's what we're being asked. It's not, do we think that the property is clean, or do we not want those things? It's, do we have evidence that shows that?
I'm seeing all these bills all the way back to from 9/4/20 back to 4 April, and they're all, the electric's well over, almost $200 each month.
But it's the kilowatt hour part. Like if you can look at where it says electric consumption on the back where there's the bar chart.
Right.
But again, the bills aren't, they're still not, I mean, it needs to be a car sale. It needs to be a picture of the lot with at least one car in it. I mean, past that, you know.
To your point, Member Bly, it looks like in March or April, the water consumption drops to 0 and the electric consumption drops.
So, I don't know, maybe a third or a quarter of what it had been in October. So heading right into the hottest months when you would think we'd be using electricity, it drops down to maybe just those lights on the site. I don't know, but.
Ms. McMullen, I'm not sure if the light's for you or Mr. Hurst.
All right, I was just gonna let you know, we did have some data from the kilowatt usage, and I have it on the screen here, but it just kind of shows, this is for electric consumption from August of 2019 on, so just in general, it looks like it went down around the April time period last year, so just consistent with what Member Blythe was saying. And I did want to, on the timeline, I did want to confirm, we did start looking at this at the end of February, and I received the first GRU bill, or the GRU bill that you have in your packet was received in the beginning of March.
Thank you. Mr. Newman.
So the pictures of the Facebook auto sale things, were those provided by the owner, or is that something that you guys found?
Those were provided by the owner, but I do believe that that we saw those posts as well. I didn't take a screenshot of them myself, but I believe Andrew had seen those posts as well.
Again, just trying to get to evidence. So
the last post, I think, was May 4th or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those were all the posts we could get, so.
Right, and again, that was, I mean, not, the May 7th was, there was gonna be a community cook-off or something like this. There was an announcement of a community cook-off. You know, so I guess April 24th seems to me like the last thing that I see in terms of what's been provided to us as the, as a advertisement for some car.
There was a post for, I think, above the, I forget which car it was, but if you look above it, it's got a May.
Right. So just trying to sort of establish, if we can, you know, what is, if Mr. Blythe, you know, doesn't think that you know, the GRU records is sufficient as evidence, and the evidence that we have here, again, sometime late April seems to be what I'm looking at seems to be as the last date, then it's like 9 months from that, which basically gets us into January of 2021. And so, you know, so I guess you know, you guys closed on this. When did you close?
We closed the first part of March.
Right.
Well, the license for Mr. Winfred Baker was denied, I guess, 12/30/2020.
When did you all go under contract? So you closed in March. When did you go under
Very quickly. I
contract?
forget how quick it was, but it was probably 30, 40 days.
Okay.
Can you talk to me?
Sure.
So, because the code does allow for us to discount that transaction period. So,
Give me a second, I'll tell you.
but if it wasn't, you know, looking at our evidence, if that contract wasn't before January, I think you were still outside of the 9 months. It doesn't sound like it was before January.
Mr. Daniels, try to talk.
Yeah.
Can you talk into the microphone?
We entered into the contract in February.
Okay.
February what?
7th? Let's see. It's dated February 11th, 2021.
Okay, so I think you may have been, you know, close to the 9 months, but we're looking at outdoor storage. The last pictures that we see on the site were the end of April. In my mind, it was abandoned more than 9 months, and I am sympathetic. You know, I understand it went through different property owners. It's not, you did not own the property for those 9 months. And I'm sympathetic to that, but we sort of have to follow the rules. So, I mean, I'm not seeing any evidence that there was outdoor storage on the site after the end of April last year.
Not seeing it, but Ms.
But-
Lewis has stated that the vehicles were there and being part of his operation. And that was the end of July, the first week in August.
But she wrote that statement how many months later?
Yeah, I mean, when we got ready to close, you know, we asked her to tell us, you know, we got the lease and the other documents that we could from.
Mm-hmm. Sure, you can step up. Please introduce yourself and use the microphone.
Hi, I'm Teresa Rajai, Mohammed's wife. And I'll start off by saying I started working for him 38 years ago. And in the car lot business. And he runs a really good business. He hasn't, I don't know why code violations were in the presentation, because he hasn't been faced in all that time with code violations. So that's all irrelevant to me. But I want to say that the part with the timing, so we see a post in April, we see a post in May, and this was a volunteer. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that business, but he accepted volunteers to help work off the payments of the car or something like that, kind of crazy. But it's possible even the person that did the Facebook posting was a volunteer and just stopped at that point. You know, if they're posting that come out for the barbecue and shop and wash cars still and earn your volunteer hours to make your payments. And so, you know, just because Facebook stopped in May doesn't necessarily mean the business stopped in May or that there still weren't cars out there. Mrs. Lewis stated that there were cars out there still in July and August that Mr. Bowman was selling or dealing with or whatever, probably wholesaling at that point. So she has no reason to lie. I mean, it's not even her property at that point. She's just stating what she knew with the facts. The only other side point might come into play is if we have to ask for a reinstatement, is that even if you go with the timeline of April and May, when Mr. Wilfred, the new tenant, applied for his license, that was December. So he went in there in October and November, did his remodeling, his repainting, cleaned up the lot, got rid of the tires, and he should have been given that license. There's no reason why he should not have been given that license. And he was done remodeling and ready to park cars there to hit the tax return season, which is March, January, February, March is the good best time to sell cars. So if he had been given his license, which he should have been, there's no reason he shouldn't have been, he would have been open December or January, and definitely that would have been within the 9 months. So he would have been there within the 9 months selling vehicles. When we came in March, April, February, we would have continued on with the same business. So if you could also consider that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newman?
Again, I think this, again, I'm not a lawyer, but like just for you all to understand, like, we have to sort of make decisions based on facts, like in evidence that's being put in front of us. And so, you know, I don't know, some of the stuff is hearsay, right? I mean, so, you know, if I had my druthers, I'd say, hey, if you can provide some hard evidence that there was, you know, that this was being used in the way it was supposed to be used, you know, after, you know, that makes it so this 9 months it hasn't been abandoned, bring it. I mean, and maybe, you know, I'd like to see it, but like right now, I'm not. And again, we're very sympathetic. It has you're right. This has nothing to do with you guys in terms of what you guys have done in your business and the violations. Yeah, we're not holding any sort of judgment. We're just trying to sort of figure out. We're being asked to try to sort of determine whether it's been abandoned, or, you know, that there's been non-conforming use from whatever period of time. So, you know, we're not. And again, so I'm kind of. I mean, I don't know what the other board members are thinking. I don't know what we have to sort of, whether we have to decide this right now. But, you know, if I'm going to get asked to, so vote on something, like there's not enough preponderance of interest to demonstrate that there has been this, it's been going on for this period of time. I'm willing to say, to give, you know, a continuance next month to see if there can be some actual sort of evidence sort of brought forward, because we want to be fair. And, you know, you guys have heard, you know, from us, you know, I'm willing to give the benefit of doubt for that. But, you know, if that happens and it comes back, it's like, man, there better be some like really hard evidence to show us that there were cars on that thing, and, you know, it was being used in that way. So I'd be curious what, you know, the other board members think.
Let me address two things. One is, in a quasi-judicial type of proceeding, hearsay is permitted. It's always about how you evaluate the different pieces of evidence, or how you weigh the totality of what has been provided. Our burden of proof is that it's more likely than not that it occurred in terms of what's been presented. It's not some high standard such as clear and convincing, or you know, beyond a reasonable doubt, which would be the criminal standard. You know, the board could, you know, give us some time to produce some more evidence to the board and defer the action. And we probably can try to dig up some more records. But when you look at what you're supposed to provide to the city, it's fairly loose. I mean, it's not, you know, a high standard in terms of what you need to produce. You know, I don't know if the city has pictures of the site. You know, I'm still trying to get a hold of some of the code enforcement violations so I can see what all that was about. But you know, and then they dropped the new one based on the fact that you've got a homeless situation, which I would hope the city would spend more time cleaning up in front of the firehouse on South Main instead of running around citing other people, or at least open the doors to the firehouse so we had more housing for the homeless. But you know, I think we've met the burden. It's a low burden. It's not a high burden. And typically, the ability to have a lease, to have the utilities on, you know, whether he sold 1 car or 100 cars, you know, I think we've shown this board that were cars on the lot by people that don't really have an interest in the matter at this point in time. And that was at least the end of July or the 1st of August. And we did close pretty quickly, so that didn't give us a whole lot of extension.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ackerman.
Realpolitik view of this, which is, first of all, the procedure is, I think Mr. Person says it's the first time it's come before a board. It appears to me that whatever number we come up with, it's close. And the procedure permits, if we say no, that if we say yes, it has been abandoned, the procedure permits him to then come to us and get a special use permit to do the use he wants to do. And it strikes me that we ought to give him the benefit of the doubt, and rather than make him go through all this procedure, then he ends up getting it 3 months later anyway. And so I know that's kind of a loose view of this, but it's unclear to me that it's, you know, whether it's 9 months or 8 months, or, I mean, it's obviously obscure. The evidence is very inconclusive. It just doesn't seem like we ought to beat him over the head on this. That's just my view.
Okay. Mr. Blythe.
The property owner had mentioned that you don't want to do automotive sales on the property. Is that correct? I mean, does that matter that it's not going to be used for sales?
You do want
The sales are allowed now. It's the outdoor storage.
Not without display, correct?
Okay. I mean, I thought I heard you say you just wanted to like wash cars, and I mean, it didn't sound like you wanted to sell things on the property. Did I mishear that?
I want to sell cars in the property. And may I add something, Mr. Newman? I can ask for the hard evidence. We did do our due diligence. I called not court enforcement, the planner, Mr. Juan Castello. I asked him, what do you need from us? He said, we need proof to say that this place was not abandoned. I said, like what evidence? He asked for GRU is a good evidence. Lease from the owner is a good evidence. A statement from the previous manager that he was operating there is a good evidence. We all gathered all these information, we have it. We have the evidence, signed letter from the Jason that he was there till September 2020. All the GRU bill for the last five months period before that. These are the things they asked us to provide, and we did it. We got the lease from the owner. You know, I don't know what else to get. When they gave us those information to go after it, and I did go after them, and I'll provide all of them. So I don't know what else to hard evidence. You know, that's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hawkins.
Clear, we don't have any of that. The only things that we've been.
The only information we've been provided in writing is one GRU bill and a bunch of pictures of Facebook posts. And the GRU bills show the power and the water usage declined dramatically in the April timeline, and the Facebook posts, they show that at least somebody was advertising cars for sale there on Facebook as late as May 1, 2020. And everything else that you've described, I know Mr. Daniel described a bunch of stuff, but it's not, I can't glean any information from Mr. Daniels describing something verbally. So I just want you to know that when you tell us that you have all that evidence, I know that none of us have seen it.
We did.
Well,
And yeah, again, I can't consume any of that information in that format. I literally can't read it, and
Well,
my prescription's not that strong, it's just not legible.
If that is the case, please give us a little bit more time. I'll be happy to make copies of all of them. The lease, all the GRU for 6 months, a statement notarized from the previous owner that was there, Jason, that he was operating there, the lease from Miss Lewis there, Mr. Wilford that he went applied for license in November last year, and he was denied. There was no reason for him denying him because he was within his right from end of April. From end of April till November, it's only 7 months. So non-conforming uses abandoned more than 9 months, and he wasn't. That's my point. Regardless, when I bought the property, take me out of the picture. Mr. Wilford had a lease from Miss Lewis. I have all that. I have the statement from the Jason. Yes, you do not have it. I'm sorry that they did not provide it to you. But give us more time. I'll be happy to. Mr. Daniel can email it to you. We have all the evidence. We do have all the evidence. And that's what the evidence was. I was told by the planner, Mr. Juan Castillo. I was communicating with him all that. I did all my homework. I went after code enforcement. What did he do? He said, violation was tire cells, mechanical, right side, all violation except car cells, because he was within his right. The place was licensed to sell cars. He had a lease for retail sales of automobile, and he was doing it. My point is, the gentleman before me had a lease on the property. He made the sign, he remodeled the place. In November, he went to the Division of Motor Vehicle to get his license. Division of Motor Vehicle emailed me, Mo, we had an email from Mr. Andrew Person that do not give license for that location. It's only 7 months. Even by the pictures on Facebook advertising. I know he was operating until September, and that's the time it changed hand, but still he was within his time frame. So if you can, please give us time. I'll be happy to provide all the statement, all the GRU 8 months, 6 months. I can go to GRU, get more statement from them.
Mr. Newman? You're okay? All right.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion we continue this to next month.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. We haven't gone to the public yet. Is that amenable to you? Okay. It would be really helpful, and if you can work with staff to get us those documents or whatever additional documents you can put together. We need to have them. I think the city needs them like 2 weeks ahead of the meeting.
Email to ask about what protocol for documents for, these Zoom hearings, and didn't really get a response to that particular question. So that's why we came today with the usual put them on the table kind of thing.
Okay, well, I believe if you can email them to either Mr. Castillo or Ms. McMullen, we can get them in our packets for the next agenda.
Yeah. When's your next meeting?
It is May.
The fourth Thursday.
It's May 27th, I believe.
Okay. Before we take a vote, we'll go to if there's any other public comment. I believe we've heard from everyone here. Is there anyone on the phone lines on this item?
Madam Chair, there's still no one on the phone lines. The floor is yours.
You've had an easy night.
I'll tell you, I'd rather be busy.
Okay, so bringing it back to the board, we have a motion to continue this item to next month. Ms. McMullen, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Ackerman?
Yes.
Sutton?
Yes.
Newman? Yes. Hawkins?
Yes.
Blythe?
Yes.
Hurst?
Yes.
Corrigetto?
Yes.
Motion passes. Continued to May 27th.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and we will see you again next month. Yeah, you'll be in old business.
Actually, yes, it will be one of the first items since it's under old business. Thank you.
I do not see any information items on the agenda, but Ms. McMullen and Mr. Persons, is there anything you need to brief us on?
Madam Chair, I believe we're likely going to have Erin Condon come at the next meeting, so we'll agenda the presentation of her plaque, and I understand that she's also picking up the plaque for Megan Walker Radke as well.
Okay, great. That's excellent. Any other member comments? Our next meeting date, we just heard, we believe is May 27th. So with that, we will adjourn for tonight and see you all next month.